do one of the against.
Hold that story.
20 seconds for it. Okay, and he says, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, and please don't call the press, and what can we do for you? He says, I said, well, we're pretty hungry. I'd like to have lunch. He said, sure, where do you want to go? I said, there's a great restaurant. So up we go. I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, and he ordered a double scotch.
That's a good story.
Yeah. John, howdy here.
I hear well, Roger. How you doing?
Doing all right. Better. How are you?
I'm hanging in. I managed to aggravate my quad tear yesterday with a slip and fall, and so I'm having a little bit of a slower day.
Well, I'll tell you, you picked a good day to zoom in because it's pretty nasty outside.
It's pretty nasty out there. It just had slip and fall written all over it. So I said I'm gonna just do it from home. It's funny, the new knee device actually feels pretty good and the bone feels good, but the quad tear has just been super stubborn about healing. So, you ever torn your quad?
Okay.
Ready, Brooke? Yeah.
I'd like to call to order the May 14th work session for the town of Alta, and we have a presentation today by our facilities planning group, FFRK, what's FFRK stand for?
FFKR.
FFKR.
It's the four founding members of our firm, their last names.
Okay, got
Ferguson, you never remember the second half.
it.
Ferguson, Frank, I think, Kingston and Rubin.
Okay,
So I'll just say first of all that, obviously it's been a few months since Nate or any of this team have been here to a council meeting. The last time Nate was here, I believe, was in November, and they presented kind of a first take at a facility condition assessment, which they compiled with a team of technical folks, a month or two prior to that meeting. And then we went through an exercise with the council to try to establish kind of priorities for future, for future town of Alta facilities. In the meantime, they've been doing a variety of things, including working on this kind of space planning exercise in which they crunch some of the existing conditions information they compiled back in the fall when they came and prepared kind of as-built floor plans for the buildings we don't have floor plans for. Interviewed town staff to know about our functional needs and whether they were being satisfied, and if not, how to satisfy them. So they took all that information and went into a study of a couple different kind of floor plan layouts, functional space plans for new hypothetical new town facilities, and that's what they're presenting now. So this is really the biggest remaining element of their scope of work, and what remains after that is to compile, basically finish the work they've done and compile it all. And I think there's a fair amount of synthesis. There will be new material generated in the synthesis of all that into a plan a little further. It's really the big missing element. So
The high level.
yeah, and I'll just point out that obviously when we started this project, the future of our latest snows was not a topic of discussion, at least not very it was remote if it was, and now it is very much a topic of discussion. And we never asked FFKR to incorporate that. Can talk a little bit about more about how to consider what that does to our needs, and thus what it might do to the scope and cost of a future facility project.
Yeah.
So
Can I ask a question on that as a preamble to what we're gonna get from FFKR? So I'm assuming that on the heels of this, we'll then have an opportunity collectively and with the public to go, okay, way ahead, or
yeah,
refined way ahead possibly or revised way ahead.
so these guys are gonna provide a recommendation, and we're gonna have to decide what to do with it, whether to move forward with, more or less one of their recommendations, or take a more piecemeal approach. I mean, really, they have two primary recommendations, but there's a lot to contemplate in their findings on what our existing spaces do and provide and how they can be modified to optimize our services and make room for growth in the organization. So they are gonna be done with their work for us probably before we make a formal decision about
Okay.
the project.
Yeah, I will just put a disclaimer too, Chris said that we had some floor plans, they're so conceptual, it's really, we're just looking at kind of a massing of how do the spaces fit together from an adjacency standpoint, what needs to be next to that, what? Obviously, like. Design was not a part of our scope, we did not ever include that, when we were doing these layouts, it was, like I said. What needs to be what next to what, and then how do you circulate between the spaces or access these spaces? Those were what we were considering, what works from a functional standpoint. The other disclaimer is everything in this report is recommendations from our team. It is nothing that, the town is sold into, these are our professional recommendations for things that the town can do. We have multiple options, like Chris said, but ultimately it's up to the council and the public to decide what course of action is taken at the end of the day.
Nate, I might make one point for you, but you can be confident that all of us that are interested in this, through these slides, fortunately, they've been available to us for some time, so don't feel obligated to go through everything, hit the highlights, whatever you want us to emphasize.
Awesome, thank you for that. So some of this is information we went over, just to have it high level again, so. Like Chris said, we did a breakdown of your current square footages for facilities, that's everything here in Alta, and we also included the storage unit that's down in Sandy in Salt Lake Valley. As part of these totals, and all in, the town currently has just over 10,000 square feet of space that is usable. Based on our conversation with staff and our other recommendations, it would grow to be about 13,000 square feet of total space, so only an increase of about 3,000 square feet. And then all would be said and done. Part of what we did, and we talked about this preliminarily, last time I was up here, was we did facility condition assessments. What is in the full report now is the costs. You see just an excerpt of one of the buildings and one of the overviews here on the left, where it talks about each recommendation that was made by either FFKR or one of our consulting engineers. And then a cost that was obtained by a third-party cost estimator for that scope of work here. Then I think it's important just to kind of talk about how we got the numbers we did. When it comes to some of the assessment, so what we did, we looked at how total the deficiencies or the repairs that we have cost estimates for and what that would look like, and we didn't do everything for the purpose of. Sometimes you get double up. And sometimes, if we said architecturally replace lighting, and then our electrical engineer also said replace lighting. We didn't want that counting twice in the cost of, or how much it would cost to repair a building. Or sometimes it would be, we work in A levels of A, B, and C. C would account for A and B, and so we would just go with C, so it's kind of worst case scenario numbers. And then we looked at what would be the current cost of replacement for a building, and that was just a cost per square foot analysis.
And 800 is what you guys are still using.
That is what we're still using.
Okay.
That number might have gone up slightly since we got that number in the fall, just because of escalation in the last 6 months, but it's still, inflation hasn't been that crazy from what we've seen in our other construction projects, that it's still very much a good ballpark for right now. So starting with the town office building, the cost of recommended repairs is just over $1 million, and a lot of those repairs to the town office building are very elective. Overall, the office is in great condition, structurally and finish wise. Most of these $1 million would be to kind of, like I said, elective upgrades, upgrading your lighting, replacing furnaces or mechanical equipment. The building's about 25 years old, 25, 30 years old. And that's the time you start to see mechanical equipment starting to fail in any typical building. And then the other big thing on this one is just accessibility concerns and making sure it's accessible to not only staff and the public. So that's the cost of repairs. The cost of replacement would be just over 2 million. So again, this one though, very elective, it's in great condition. Alta Central, this is and please anyone on council ask any questions as we go.
Yeah, this chart on the right is pretty interesting, the way they laid that out with the arrows.
Yeah, so this Alta Central is the really kind of wonky one, and so it's different from the others as well, and that's why I want to spend some more time on this. So looking at the cost of recommended repairs for the existing Alta Central, it's $3.8 million. But where I have a hard time, and that's why there's these different numbers, is if you were to replace this facility square foot for square foot, it would cost you about 2.5 million. So it's a lot more in the town's interest if you're doing a square foot for square foot based off our preliminary numbers to do a replacement of that building. The kicker though is not all the things the marshals need to be a modern police force can fit in that building. And so that's why we have the secondary numbers of, we took all of the marshals spaces, including, the storage and quarters that they have here in the community center. As well as planning for some of the additional growth and said, okay, if they were to have that new facility, what would that cost be?
Is there, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish Nate.
And that cost would be in the neighborhood of about 8.8 million. So it's about double the cost of the repairs. But remember, you have about 3,000 additional square feet that I said at the beginning. And all of that additional square footage would pretty much be the marshals for growth, for enclosed bays, for vehicle parking, interview rooms, evidence storage, those kinds of facilities.
8 point what?
Just shy of 8.8.
And then is that 8.8 for that, does that include the ADA requirements that would go? I'm asking this specifically because of the building siting, I think complicates everything, and is that included in this consideration?
So the 8.8 is just a square foot estimate of the cost, so
Okay,
because it'd be a new construction, it would have to comply with all ADA measures.
right,
The question would be siting it where the town has land,
yep,
and
okay,
what does that mean? And that's, again, like I said, we didn't do design, so that's something we can't really say or speak to.
thanks.
This one is interesting to me because of it'd be interesting to understand the parcel that it's sitting on a little better. I go to the county website and it looks like none of the buildings are on it, where they're supposed to be. When you think about redeveloping this site, I don't think this is a great spot for the marshal's office because it's off the road and I think there'd be just a lot of access issues to overcome. But when you think about redeveloping this site, I think it has some positives in that I think the building footprint isn't using or isn't maxing out the buildable square footage of the site. That makes sense? Want to say that again?
No, that's right, that's what I was saying. John, I think you're tracking a really important challenge with that as far as it goes with this as a repurposing of that building versus other things that could be later.
Yeah, I don't think repurposing it to be the marshal's office makes a ton of sense, but it adds to my desire to tear it down, that we could probably build a building with a bigger footprint on this parcel.
And hopefully, John, we're gonna get squared away to do some more site assessment work this summer, so we can get that information about the ground itself. I do think it's kind of a pile of boulders that was put there to support Alta Central in the 50s, but that's just what I get from kicking the tires.
Or the boulders.
Yeah, John, that's your observation that the building's not on the property. That is very common. I found in Alta is that the county maps and where the buildings are just are really bad.
Yeah, and we found the same thing when we were looking for parcel information as well, and John, I agree with your statement of ideally, this is not a good location for the marshals. They should be closer to the road for a number of reasons, so I 100% agree with that assessment as well.
Great.
Any other questions on Alta Central? Okay. Then the community center, this one's pretty interesting, just looking through the same comparisons, repairs to the community center would be about 3.4 million. A lot of that has to do with damage from the slope on the north side of the building, and then the two additions where the stairs are. When our team was here, we saw evidence of them starting to pull away from the main structure here, and that just creates a lot of concern from a structural standpoint and a safety standpoint. And so that's why that number is so high. Square footage for the community center, it'd be about 3.7, right in the middle there, 3.6, you might say.
Replace the same square footage,
Same square footage, yes, sir.
3.6.
I think that's
So-
pretty attractive, actually. You know, we kind of beat around the bush about this decision, but to me, I guess I've read enough of this to feel like this is the building we should be replacing first. And it may not accommodate a much bigger building on this site. Think about it, replacing it with roughly the same square footage, I think probably makes the most sense.
And we, you know, we can use more, we can, if we want a bigger building on the site, we can apply for a special use permit. We can exchange out of the vacant land that we're less likely to use. We've had those discussions with the forest. I mean, it's not like a slam dunk, but it is a process we can go through. Special use permit would be faster. But we've had those conversations with the former district ranger and the new district ranger, and I don't think we need to assume we're limited to this, you know, the land under this building that we got from the federal government is a postage stamp. It's barely, it doesn't even have the rockfall netting on it entirely, as far as we can tell. So anyways.
No, I think that's right, that this one, as opposed to Alta Central, this one is not on a site that has a bunch of excess buildable land. I did notice your comment about upgrading the building envelope. I think that would make sense, but it's not going to yield 50% more square footage in the footprint or anything like that.
No, but it brings up something you had mentioned before, John, which is like, I agree, you never get 100% or 50% more, but vertical provides part of the solution. And I think I'm just floating this out there, and I've had this conversation with other people, but in the spirit of that, in the spirit of economics, I think there's some UDOT considerations in here for partnership that we ought to really talk about going forward. I don't want to bog down this presentation, but it's a way to reduce the cost. We get them to pay for 50% of it or 60% of it, or Roger talks to the governor and they pay for 80% of it. You know, and whatever it does, it helps. And I think that also strengthens the partnership, and it's a requirement for public safety in the town.
And that combined use between UDOT and AMO seems to make some intellectual sense.
Yeah, and there's that too. And they can all sleep in the same cots.
I don't think that we could go too much higher, because you wouldn't want to build higher than the base facility zone lets the private landowners, you know, build their hotels and whatever. You wouldn't want to have a building that was dramatically higher than that. So I think you'd probably want to stick to the base facility zone height restriction.
Is that, do you know offhand, is that three,
Well, it's
maybe 3
depends on
stories
what
up?
subzone it's in. I mean, the hotels are 2 stories above the road, but all the BFC buildings north of the road are individually determined, but, you know, so.
Yeah, but the spirit of what you're
It's also
saying,
never changed.
right,
It's
but
never
we
changed, so
we
that-
need to be compliant with what we.
Yeah.
Because imposition is the right word on everyone else.
One thing to think about is your current building, it really might function more as a 3-story building because your first floor is so tall.
In some ways, yeah.
In some-
It looks like a 3-story building.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not to bog down,
So,
but there's a lot of potential here of convergence and cost sharing and potential, you know. Anyway,
Decision.
Yeah, so kind of recommendation, so our recommendations that we feel, I guess the most strongly about are solid black lines, and then kind of. What we think is really more up to the town to decide are the dashed black lines. So we think it makes the most sense, kind of for the conversation here, is to demolish the community center at some state, and then Alta Central, I think it was John that said, maybe you don't demolish it, but maybe we decommission it, for lack of a better term, so it's no longer that marshal's office. It's no longer serving that purpose. So this is kind of a roadmap to different options that you could do, for some of those things. We've taken the time, as part of our study to look at 2 of these options. And I just have a high level overview. For conversation's sake and just simplicity, we just placed the massing of the new buildings on top of where the current community center is. Obviously, that is fully up to the town, and as the conversation said, this may not be where you ended up building at some point eventually. But so this first test it, we looked at really leaving the town office building as is with administrative staff there. This really minimizes the amount of any remodel work that will need to occur in that space. And you can really minimize the upgrades. Like I said earlier, they're really elective from what we recommend for repairs. And that might offer the town a lot of, for lack of a term, bang for their buck in terms of that. What we look at is in this option, and same in the second option, is decommissioning, like I just said, Alta Central, so it no longer serves the marshal's office. Then we would serve as a combined kind of community center and marshal's office space. So this would be a significant building just because of the size of the marshal's office moving forward, with additional vehicle bays, some additional evidence storage, the interview rooms, some additional quarters for future growth of staff and recruitment. Really, we didn't know at the time that there was considerations for Our Lady of the Snows, and so that's why everything is kind of combined with the community center functions in some way at this point. That's option 1. Option 2 is similar and yet very different as well. So again, Alta Central was decommissioned. In this option, just because it currently functions in this capacity, the town office will sometimes house the dispatch during severe interlodge. And I may not use those terms right, but when there's some very high risk of avalanche danger to Alta Central, the dispatch team will move over into Alta Central just from a safety standpoint and operate out of there until interlodge is lifted.
I never knew that.
To do that now.
Am I wrong?
No, I believe you, I didn't know that.
There are times where we evacuate Alta Central and move the dispatchers into the town office building. Usually when the shock that affects that zone is underway.
And what's the avalanche risk of this building?
We assume it's lower. We've never done a study, but all the studies of the paths overhead here throughout the town seem to indicate the Rustler and this site are about as good as it gets along the highway, literally. So
Thank you.
That's good to know too.
and much better than our other site.
Okay.
But so because of those factors and the fact that Alta or the town office building was built to withstand those avalanches, it makes sense to move this the dispatch over here, and really dispatch could expand to take that whole facility for living quarters, for dispatch center records, things like that. One thing with dispatch centers is they're supposed to be completely secure so that no one can really get into them. And so this, by being a standalone facility, it can meet that need very easily. It's also not a public facing facility because of its nature as a dispatch. And so to an extent, you might be able to reduce potential accessibility. It would still need to be accessible for staff, but the public accessibility may not be as high because it's not a public facing facility.
3 stories, I think, is part of that equation if we can get it on here.
Yeah. And so that's the other part of the equation too, is you can look at how you stack things. So in this option test fit 2 we have here, it's town office, community center, Alta Central, and we have it shown as 2. But you could also make that 3. Where you start getting into issues is you will need an elevator, you will need those kinds of things.
Yeah, to be clear, what the difference in this proposal is that the town office functions, all the public business facing functions of town services move onto this site.
So that's.
So like the other one, it's a bigger building, it's bigger still. So again, this solves the fundamental accessibility challenges to the town office, which is that it approaches the fundamental accessibility challenge, which is that, you have to be able to walk on a steep snowy slope
settlements here.
So this would be post office,
Council chambers, admin team, it'd be quarters and one secure part for the marshals, but it'd also be a public area for the marshals, so anyone that came in for reports or anything like that.
Yeah.
They would be everything would come to this facility, so anytime the public really needs to interact with the government functions of Alta, it'd be here in that facility.
So what would be in,
Alta Central would town office building would just house the dispatch. Functions of the marshal's office,
oh, gotcha.
and housing.
and which would include the housing for the dispatchers,
Ah,
yeah, quarters for dispatchers.
Okay, alright, so there are some efficiencies, I don't wanna
But,
turn that into a tomb.
yeah, and so there are some things, so, and that's the,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of the handoff. Because you're changing the function, there are some things that you have to do to make them technically per building code, quarters or bedrooms. You have to add additional windows. What does that do for the overall capacity of the avalanche safety? Does that reduce it? Well, it depends on where you add them probably. And that's something that would have to be solved in design, but it would increase your overall cost of having to remodel more of that space.
Yeah.
So it's a handoff of costs might be higher, but do you get a better kind of governmental efficiency out of this option?
Well, that's an oxymoron that we embrace a lot.
It seems like the combined use approach, though, is a little contrary to what the marshal has expressed in the past. You know, at least my takeaway has been that they're really looking to have their own building separate from all the other functions. And so when you say, well, let's have the marshal's office there and let's have the town offices there and let's have all these other spaces, it seems a little inconsistent with what the marshal has expressed in the past.
I agree with you, John, and that's something I talked about with Mike as well, where it's kind of two options. One where, especially if the purchase of Our Lady goes through and if that will become a community center, I'm totally theoretical, I don't know what you guys are talking about in that realm.
Yeah.
But you know, if that were to become your new community center, your new council chambers, any new building could really be a dedicated marshal's building. And then to your point, John, could split it, you could. But Mike has told you that that's not his preference, he would prefer to keep everyone in the Alta Marshal's office together in one facility.
And the way I see this is, because this is really helpful, this is a great thing, by the way, I really like this one. Much more useful than I think the last one, but as
Yeah.
interesting as that was.
A
But
dedicated marshal space, I think, is the right sort of takeaway going forward, you know, to try to achieve having all of the marshal related functions in one building. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think the way ahead on that is post your recommendation and closing this activity out for you. This is why I'd like to push for some sort of quasi opportunity with the public and retreat, you know, where we can start to shape this some more and talk with the marshal a lot, John, you know, and hear what everybody has to say.
We definitely want to build a building they're gonna be happy with, right?
Yeah, it's the only, yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of to wrap this up, I know we have 1 minute until the council meeting officially starts. Just high level, some square footage numbers for you guys. Option one, where the town office building remains pretty much as is. We said there might be a couple hundred square feet of renovations. And then the new facility to take over Marshall's office services, as well as the community center services. All in, you're right around 14,000 square feet of renovated and new construction square footage. Is our estimate. If you were to do option two, where the town office becomes a dispatch facility and then the town office functions, the rest of the marshal's office functions and the community center functions go into one. It is greater, a lot of that is just efficiencies of where you can fit space.
you're talking about the yellow ones.
Yep, that's not fit too, the yellow.
Yeah.
And then of course, renovating almost the entirety of the town office building, so that's about 17,500 of. I'm calling it disturbed space that's renovated and new construction square footage.
Well, you're giving us plenty of food for thought.
Oh, wait till you see the full report, I think we're at like page like 160 or 200 of the full report when I last.
That's
looked.
not, that's what we get for town council meeting.
Yeah, it sounds like that's what you have to miss that. So. Okay, any last minute questions before
I appreciate you coming up. This is a little bit of an intermediate step. It's kind of the key future facing component of their scope of work for us. It wasn't necessarily the ideal month in this year to do that. I might have, maybe other things notwithstanding, preferred to wait till we had a complete document, they could come up and present the whole thing. But we've been plugging some of these high level facility costs into capital plans and talking about them in budget meetings and so forth. And so I just wanted to not justify those projections, but just start to chew on them a little bit with y'all, because it's obviously, it's just such a huge, it's gonna be such a heavy lift to do a project of this magnitude, or even a project approaching this magnitude.
Yeah, well, I think this intermediate step was good. I mean, there's good consensus amongst a lot of people that are decision makers, and I think it's helping shape everyone's collective
Yeah.
and individual view.
One last thing I just wanna say, I know this is the last thing I'll say and then I'll step down. We are, just as part of the final scope of this project, we are getting cost estimates from our estimator for what new construction would look like. We got narratives of building systems for like MEP, structural, those kinds of things. To really try and hone in a cost number estimate for what these two tested options would look like, and that'll be in the final report as well.
Okay, that'd be really helpful.
I gotta say, I read the presentation from 6 months ago again, and this presentation. I thought together they really were comprehensive and very valuable and useful, and I appreciate the effort you put in. I thought the estimating was great, particularly the different approaches to taking care of our existing buildings, and yeah, I thought this was money well spent. Thanks for your time.
Indeed. Now, do we have to have a motion to adjourn this? Okay,
I move we adjourn the facilities planning update from FFKR.
I second the motion.
all in favor? Okay, in that case, I would like to call to order the Alpha Town Council meeting of May 14th, 2025. And note that there are some citizens here who might want to make some citizen input. So if you'd like to do so, please step to the podium and tell us who you are and speak.
I think so. This is also Cambridge School District.
Okay, that's it. All right.
They're up
Sorry
next.
about that. Okay. And Ms. Burke is not here to make her usual.
We love hearing people.
She's been corresponding with staff a little bit, so.
Okay. All right, in that case, we'll move on to a presentation by Canyon School District Board Member Katie Dolly. Now, are you in any relation to the mayor?
I am not. Well,
Okay.
distantly.
Distant.
All the dollies come from two brothers that came over from Norway, the Cache Valley. And so everybody's related, but it goes. There's
You have to
different
look
ways.
up the tree a lot to find you.
Yeah, so I don't know him personally, but we are distantly related through my husband, so.
Well, he's a good guy and
All right, well, we wanted to just come and I wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new Canyons board member that represents the town of Alta. My name's Katie Dolly. I have served I've worked as a teacher for a number of years, and then now I run a financial education company with my husband. And so as we came up, we wanted to just talk to you guys about what your concerns are for the education of the students in your town. And anything, any feedback that you have currently. We'll probably have our other teachers coming in here shortly. Our current teacher is moving on. She's taken an international teaching position. And we have a new teacher, Miss Vandervelde, that will be starting running the classroom this next year. So hopefully they'll make it in. We're running ahead of schedule, which is that's always good for a meeting. Good job. But to start off with, we're gonna have just sort of a state of the district. Unfortunately, our superintendent is out sick today. And so is that Leon or McKay gonna do our state of the district?
I'll be already.
Sorry. So Leon's just gonna give sort of state of the district, talk about some positive things happening, some of our hard things that are happening in the district too, there's always concerns there. And then we'll have a discussion about your thoughts on education in your town.
Can I just say something in the introduction here? In the beginning of the century, there was a school, but it was a 2-grade private school. And with a very limited, and then I think in OLS. Debbie was the school marm. And some of us went down and lobbied. What was then, it wasn't Kenyon School District then, it was, I can't remember what it's.
Jordan.
Yes. And I frankly tried to do a guilt trip on them. I said, look, we've been educating kids from this community for decades, it's time you helped us. And whether that worked or not, I don't know, but we got a school. And Jan was the first teacher. And it has been a real asset to the community ever since. And my contention is allow people to stay in Alta and maintain their resident in Alta, because before that, when they had kids, they had to go someplace else. And so I think there's an unsung hero among you or your predecessors that brought the school to Alpha.
Okay, very good, and Jan's done an excellent job really running a one-room schoolhouse, it's quite unique in the state of Utah.
And I'm sure you've seen the Life magazine, or not Life magazine, the New York Times
yeah.
article on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was extremely complimentary.
Yeah, I was just in her classroom this week, and it was really fun to see how she's managing all of that, so.
Yeah.
We'll bring the time over to Leon and.
Okay, yes, there's Ms. Berkeley.
Hey, thank you for inviting us up. My name is Leon Wilcox. I'm the business administrator for Canyon School District. I've been there since its creation about 16 years now. I just want to introduce a couple of members of our staff. That's Dr. McKay Robinson. He is our assistant superintendent. Susan Edwards is our community engagement coordinator with us. So as Katie mentioned, Dr. Rick Robbins out ill, has had some health issues this week, so he wished he could be here, but is unable to make it, so asked that he be excused. I have to say, just a little selfishly, I was looking over your agenda, and I'm a little bit jealous of, I want to stick, we're gonna have to be asked to be excused after this, but I just want to stick around for your budget presentation. I think that's what I let it in you. It's probably me, right?
It is, that's very insightful of you.
Whatever turns you on.
I was a little bit disenchanted when, I'm seeing these headlines of Lake Moore had fallen asleep during a tax discussion back in Washington. Who does that? As Katie mentioned, Canyon School District, I've been here, has Susan, as of McKay for, since we opened in 2009. Opening day event was right across the street here at the lodge, where we held, I don't know if any of you were in attendance of that, but July 1, 2009, we had an opening event right across the street here, so still remember that. And so we've always partnered with the school here, the Gold Miners Garden. It's an actual school, it should be noted that. I know it's somewhat linked to our Granite Elementary, but as far as the state is concerned, it's an actual school. As you know, the enrollment will vary anywhere from 5 students to 15 during the peak season, ski season up here. So, we feel like we have a lot of good things. Just overall view of Canyon School District, we feel like we have a lot of really positive things happening with our 32,000 plus students who come to us every day. Our high schools are, I think, are state of the art. When we look at Former Canyon, Brighton, we rebuilt and remodeled all those within the last decade or so. And then we're starting a new innovation center down there we purchased the eBay facility in West Draper. And we'll open what we call an innovation type center where kids learn about, maybe not the, techs and trades and some of these non-traditional programs such as robotics and drones and cybersecurity, computer program, healthcare, mental assisting, farm tech, all these programs that hopefully kids can either one, go through our program, get a certificate, go right into a career, or head on to college and have an advance, have a leg up going through college. So we're excited to do that. That'll open in 2027 in the fall there. And we will be moving our tech center, which is on 90th South, over to that, and that will be at the basis and then go on from there. But we've also renovated 8 of our middle school. We have 8, and we've renovated all 8 of those. And we're looking at upgrading some of our elementaries. Have done some in the past, but upgrading some in the future as we move forward. Our test scores for our kids are still among the highest in the state. So we're really proud of our teachers getting our kids ready, making that next step. And of course, Jan is a big part of that. Like any other district and any other, local government municipality, we do have challenges out there. Budget constraints and other issues, just inflation, whether it's diesel for our buses, power for our buildings, water, textbooks going up. One of the biggest problems that we do deal with is a loss in students right now. If you go down to Sandy, Cottonwood Heights, Draper, all of our communities, we're aging out. Home prices down in the valley, in our district is an average of about 700 and last year was $703,000 for an average home. And so it's so hard for young families to afford to live there with school age children, right? So they have to go out usually out west or some other, more north or more south. So we lose students that way as we're just built out. We don't have a lot of new home construction going on. And also our birth rate. The state's birth rate, I think you've been following that, has been steadily decreasing. 10 years ago in our zip code, we had 800 more births than we had in 2023, which is the last year of our data. So that impacts our schools. And so, we also get hit by some charter schools that have offer K-6 education and some private schools and some homeschooling. And so all those have caused us to, the last 6-7 years, we've lost about 1,800. We have about 1,800 fewer elementary students than we did. So we see that trajectory keep going down, and for the next few years as well. So that's a big challenge for us. Is how we address that. We don't see that so much in our high schools because one, kids are more mobile. They can drive. If they're a junior, or senior, have a license, and also, families, once they get maybe a little bit more established, can afford a home on the east side. And then also the charter and the homeschooling are as big as issues because the older they get, the more they want to be with their friends and be in a more traditional school. So that helps out with our high school enrollment. That's why we proceed on to stay steady. But the elementary is a issue for us. So our board has what we call commissioned a study to look at doing some boundary readjustments, but also looking at possibly consolidating schools or even closing schools. Of course, if you consolidate a school, I would say you're closing one school and bring it into 2 to try to address, those overhead charges, just operating in a school with, of course, the utilities and as well as the principal and the secretary and the custodian within a school. So that is something that we're looking at. We'll be looking at over the summer and looking to bring some recommendations to our board, meeting with the public and going through that process. It's something we certainly wish we were not in that situation. Nobody does, but being down to that many students and seeing that trajectory keep going, that is a challenge for us. There are 41 school districts in the state of Utah, and 30 of us are having this type of problem of reducing enrollment. Overall with the state, their peak was a couple of years ago. They had about 675,000 students in the public school. That would be public and charter schools. Over the next decade, they project that to go down to around 620,000. With the birth rate and just changing demographics, with kids maybe not getting married as as soon as they did a generation ago, not having as many kids, and all those factors come into play there, so. So that's a challenge for all districts that we're facing right now, so. So we're gonna address that and see what happens, we don't know anything yet, we don't know if we can see the notion about consolidating schools or how that may look like, but we did list 8 schools we're gonna look at that are in the East Sandy, Cottonwood Heights area and go from there, so. With that, we'd be happy to address any questions, anything we can do to support you and any feedback we have for you, you know, as far as as supporting I will call it education up here at
Well, let me say something about supporting you. There have been times, I don't know if they've been recent, when the Grants Elementary has taken advantage of the natural environment up here in their schoolroom to basically move some education elements local, because you have a hub there. And I mean, this is a great place to learn about nature.
Yeah, and we would love to bring kids up here, but state risks does not allow us to bring school buses up here. So we can't do a field trip up to Alta because of state risk rules, because of the road. So that's the issue, yeah, we would love to be able to get kids out here hiking and doing outdoor stuff, but we can't drag a bus up the canyons, either canyon.
So what we have, so just so you're aware, but the big Cottonwood Canyon, we do have they do not have a school up there.
Right.
So we bought. For years, you know, we did drive a regular bus up there, as Katie mentioned, about 6 years ago, State Risk asked us not to do that anymore. So then we contracted out with private carriers. And that got to be very expensive doing that, so then a year ago, we bought a specialized 4x4 bus, chains, everything. And that has front brakes and just a completely revamped bus. It costs about $140,000. And that we drive up there every day and a specialized driver who has mountain training driving experience drives that every day. She's actually wonderful with the kids. We have about 15 kids that we go up there again and bring down in this bus every day. So that's how we do it up there. So so it's a little different.
I just have one comment, you know, it's interesting that you look at decreased enrollment as a challenge, you know, for me, that seems like it's a benefit. You know, we have increased housing prices, increased tax bases, you would think that you would have superior schools on the east, and that it would be a benefit for folks to have smaller classrooms, and that I wouldn't look at it as a challenge. Just as a parent, I look at that as wow, the East Bench schools are even better.
We like to think they're better, but the challenge is we get funded from the state on a per student basis. And so you still have all the overhead costs of the principal, of the secretary, of the utilities, of just the general maintenance of the building. And that's now spread amongst, you know, some of our schools, you know, we've lost 100 to 200 plus students, and so now that cost is just spread. So, and it also affects our class sizes, you know, we assign out, you know, teachers based on the number of kids in the building, and so we get some of these class sizes that we'll have only 16 or 18, which is great, you know, parents love that. But then we'll have some class sizes that will get over 30 just because of the allocation of teachers and the grades.
Can you give me a couple of numbers, your average class size and your dollars per student?
Yeah, so our average class size on an elementary is about 23. Again, we do have class sizes as in the teens, you know, around in the lower teens, 14, 15. We do staff them at kindergarten in grades 1 through 3 at 22 teachers to 1. Now, again, you don't always get 22 kindergartners or first graders, but that's our staffing ratio. And our 4th and 5th grades are 26 to 1. We have several DLI, you know, dual immersion programs. We have 8 in our district. Excuse me, 9 elementary schools that have our DLI programs. We try to get those higher at 28 kids coming in. So it's on average, our elementaries are around that 22, 23. Right.
And how about dollars for children?
We average about, the state funds us $4,500 per student. You throw in all the other state money that we get for transportation and special education and there's a list of items they fund us for, and throwing property taxes and some federal dollars, it's about $10,500 per student we spend on that.
So it's twice what you spend on them.
No, that's what we spend total. Oh,
Wait a minute.
excuse me.
You said $4,500 per student.
That's what the state funds us at, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the rest of the $5,500 or whatever it is made up by the county?
It's
Or-
made up of property taxes is a big part, but there's also other state money. And there's also federal dollars we get for special education and some of our
In Title I.
more poverty area schools and mainly in Mid-Bell.
Jen?
Are we the only one-room schoolhouse?
As far as I know, he might be the only one in the state.
You're not the only one in the state,
Not
you're the
you.
only one, I would just say in Salt Lake County.
Yeah.
So my question really is, we're talking about ratios and my understanding, and I know this changes from year to year, but I think the Alta School can have up to like 23, 24 students in the height of the winter. And my question is we have one teacher and an aide. Has there ever been any discussion about increasing the amount of time that aide spends or creating another full-time position for the school? I mean, one kindergartner, one sixth grade but I mean, she's teaching K through 8. And so it just seems like maybe, I wonder if there have been any discussions about more resources since we have such a diverse.
And just speaking to the numbers, I know this last year, the peak was 15.
Okay.
And right now, I think there's 11 registered for next year.
Oh,
And so you actually have more kids coming from the valley attending the school than actually kids that live up here.
yeah, it's work.
And so, and then, yeah, during
It's a
ski
workforce.
season, it's definitely.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
got people coming in from out of town that are here for just the season.
yeah.
So on average, elementaries have 6 to 8 aides for, it's around the 300 student school that have 6 to 8 aides and then, going out, maybe get up to a dozen, but, so the ratio.
So we're not really hitting numbers, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you're not hitting numbers, yeah.
Who do you compare yourself to?
District wide, our district,
Yeah.
no one, because we think we're best.
Okay, how can you tell?
Test scores, yeah, and what our kids do, and those who go to college and career, and we would just focus on the whole child. As far as size of district, we compare ourselves. Somewhat similar to Salt Lake, a little bit. They're of course have a big downtown tax base that we don't have. A little bit size of Weber and Washington County. But we also look at closely that we compete heavily for students and teachers and with Granite and Jordan, and employees, that's it, and Alpine. That's who we.
The neighbors.
Our neighbors, yeah, those who border us, yeah.
And you should note too, Granite District, just to our north, they are also doing a study right now, boundary study for their east side schools. So they're currently in the same process because they're seeing a similar drop in numbers.
Well, I mean, the two of you were combined, weren't you, early in
So
the?
we were combined with Jordan before.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah.
Could you just describe, like what communities, I assume that, like, there might be, in a given municipality, there might be a couple of school districts, you just decide like, what the boundaries generally.
Yeah, we have, it's under state law, a district has to comprise a whole city, it cannot cut a city in half, if you will, there's one exception, you won't get it, that's Draper, but. So we comprise Draper, except for that Suncrest area, if you're familiar with that, that's actually in Utah County, that's in Alpine. Then all of Sandy, all of Cottonwood Heights, all of Midvale, Alta and Brighton. Or municipalities, yeah. So we have some great cities and great partnerships with all of our councils and mayors, thanks to Susan and her work, so. As Katie mentioned, I used to work at Granite, their peak was 75 76,000 students in the early 2000s, and they're about 58,000. They've had to close about 10 schools over the last decade or so. So it's a hard thing. It's something that nobody, closing a school is never good.
Nope.
Anywhere, and so we acknowledge that, but we also acknowledge the physical impact of operating a school under capacity as well, so.
And in that same period of time, we built some really physically stunning buildings.
Yes, mainly our high school, we feel like our high schools are the front entrance to our. That step where our kids either going into careers or into college. We like to think that we got in our high schools. At the right, there's probably never a right time, our Brighton and Hillcrest, our two newest ones it costs about 120 million. Right now, new our high school is about 180 to 200 million,
Wow.
so, I know Salt Lake is spending 300 plus on Highland and West each, so we feel good about the buildings we got and the price we got, so.
Wow. Do you wanna ask him something, Jen?
I already did.
Go on.
I did wanna make, does anybody have a red F-150?
I have an F-150, it's kind of more gray though.
Well, I've been told that someone has a red F-150, that's got the lights on. I don't know if it's yours.
I think it was on when I walked in, honestly.
Oh, okay, so maybe they're that.
Yeah, we all came in the same car, so.
Okay.
Okay. Okay,
It's not snowing in the valley.
if not, well, yeah.
It's cold, windy and cold. It's beautiful out here, we were just calling that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the school is a tremendous asset to this community. And I hope we're an asset to your school.
Well, and thank you. I was in the classroom this week with Jan and she was just telling me all about it, learning about the school up here. And she said she loves the community support and that's been very helpful. So thank you for that, for supporting the school up here and providing some unique opportunities for the students that are going to school up here.
When is the semester over now? When
Just 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks, got it. Okay,
We'll be done.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just know, our town budget meetings, they're public, you can come anytime.
You can even zoom in on that.
No, you'd rather come in person.
I'll be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, Mike Bond is not in evidence. And he's not on the screen, so I think we'll defer him for a while. And ask if there are any questions concerning the department reports.
Can I just give a little comment?
Sure.
I just want to give Brooke props for, so, I mean, I think as the community knows and as the council knows, we've implemented the online payment system for our utilities.
Yes.
It has not been seamless.
Yes.
We're having a difficult time with the integration with a couple softwares, and we've been changing our method and procedures and trying to match their standardization, and so it's been clunky. I apologize to the community members that have been caught in this. Brooke has been working tirelessly on it. And we're putting a lot of attention on trying to fix some little nuances that are affecting the billing cycle and how people are being prompted to be billed and things like that. And I really hope we can get it figured out soon. So I just want to thank Brooke for her time and effort on it, and I wanted to acknowledge that to the community and people that we're aware and we're working on it.
Okay.
So.
I can say that it's no more funky than any other software rollout that we encounter almost. So many times. So, well done, Brooke. All right, any other questions regarding department reports? Or comments on things? All right, in that case, I'd like to call for the approval of the April 9th town council meeting minutes, the April 15th special town council meeting minutes and April staff and finance reports. Or any,
I move we do that as stated by you, always.
Should we interject? We have our teachers here, so.
you're just right, Jan.
So we just want to tell Jan, thank you for her many years of running a great program up here at Gold Miner's Daughter, and she's done lots of miracles running a one-room schoolhouse, so we appreciate that, and this is Amelia Vandervelde, did I say it right? Vandervelde. She will be your new incoming teacher. Do you want to just take a second to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure, so I'm Amelia, I am from Michigan. This is my 4th school year working here in Utah. And I am working at a Title I right now. Very passionate about it, I really loved it in my time there. Staying at Canyon School District is exciting too, and now super excited to step into this new role. Get to be creative, work with students of all ages and do all that. So also a big skier, so this kind of seems like my passions of teaching are aligning with my passion of the outdoors. I'm excited to bring that to the kids and work with the community as well.
Thanks. You got some big shoes. to
I
fill.
know, I definitely do, so I'm really excited, a little scared, very lucky to have,
Always scared. Everybody gets to do it their own way. That's the great thing about this job.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Vietnam. I have a job at an
Where?
international school in Hanoi.
Hanoi? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's that's a sporty city.
I'm sorry.
I worked in Vietnam, in Saigon, which everybody calls it down there still, and
Oh, yeah.
Hanoi a bunch, and Hue.
Yeah.
You'll really like it. It's, the culture is.
Way up in Hanoi, so hopefully it's a little less snowy.
Ho Chi Minh.
So, yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to, I don't know, new craziness.
Margaret, did you have something to say to Jan?
Oh, I just said, you don't have big shoes to fill, you have glass.
Amelia's gonna be great. We had a couple, 2 or 3 really good candidates, and I really have a lot of confidence that she'll be great, so, and a good addition to the community. So, you need to meet Sarah, she's kind of ace.
I've already known.
Oh, you did?
Well, thank you for letting us interject again,
Thanks.
so.
Yeah, well,
Probably know our public safety people who find us out in certain lives. Everyone, it's a little town, everybody sees.
well, welcome Amelia.
Yeah, thank you so
When you want the mayor to come visit you.
Yeah.
Just invite him.
I'm making a list of contacts for her and your name's on it, anybody else that needs their name on it, I'm just looking around going, oh, I forgot. I forgot.
Okay.
But I'm making a list of people, because I told her the whole community is involved with the school.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to tell you about Halloween.
Yeah. Great to meet everyone.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome indeed. What a treat.
Before I go, because I was the first teacher here a long time ago, and I remember how welcoming the community was. And I know you guys really wanted to school, everybody wanted to school, and so everyone was like all over me going, oh, let us help. Amelia, you think the same thing for her, because you know the school's been around for 20 years now, she meets the same kind of pull into the community.
Yeah, and that
That's good,
New York Times article had it very well.
yeah. It is part of the whole community, really.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, sorry.
Good luck, safe travels.
Bye, safe travels is right.
Hanoi is a really sporty city. I think we moved, we've already moved.
But have we moved to approve?
Did you did
I
that,
did.
Dan, to approve?
I had a comment on the minutes with this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I thought, obviously, we've had a bunch of meetings. I went through all those minutes from all the special meetings and all. And I must say they were really exceptionally done. I thought that they captured the spirit of the discussion, and whoever did them did just a great job on the minutes. For all 3, what do we have?
Yeah,
Three, four
I
minutes?
anguished over them.
Yes, I think I sent your private, no, they were really, really well
There
done.
were, yeah, this series of minutes, because of that fact and the emotional and because of not wanting to like misrepresent, or they were
Yeah.
very, very difficult.
You did a
But-
great
so,
job.
thank
Great
you
job.
for glad that they met your expectations.
Yeah.
I think you said that's the most challenging minutes you've ever done.
They were, oh, they have been, for sure, for those
Yeah.
reasons, yeah.
Good show. Okay, now can we vote on that?
Who's the second?
I can, oh, John raised his hand.
Yeah.
No, I was voting yes.
Well, somebody needs to second him, I can second him or you can.
I thought we had. Let's start again.
She said. All right, ready? I move that we approve the April 9th, 2025 town council meeting minutes, April 15th, 2025 special town council meeting minutes, and the April staff and finance reports.
I second.
There we go.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approved, all right. And let's see, this
There's report.
yeah, later support. Okay.
Yes.
I have some interesting news. I invited the junior senator from Utah, although I did not address him that way, John Curtis, to visit Alta this summer and meet with the town council and the citizenry. And he accepted for most of the day and responded to my suggestion to take a hike. And that.
In the political climate. So the city's coming or not coming?
I don't think I expressed it the way I meant to.
That's good.
So anyway, when I got that note back from him, I felt a little like the dog who caught the car. And now what are we gonna do? So I said, you know, come for the wildflower season, and there's a Senate recess for all of August, so that might be the time when he will show up, and we got plenty of time to plan for it, and you know, this is a pretty good opportunity, and I think we want to treat these precious hours we have with him pretty well. Polly gave me some insight on him. She had met him, I think, in Brighton, and said he's really approachable and likes to hike and likes the outdoors and doors. And I don't know what the context was that Polly met him, but it was he seems like a pretty down to earth fellow who's not over impressed with himself. You want to say anything about that, Polly?
No, I think he is very interested. He cares a lot about the canyons. I met him on a hike actually for the Citizens Climate group, where a friend of mine is part of it, and she invited me to go, and I said, gee, a great chance to meet our, you know, likely soon to be senator. He was a congressman when I met him. And he was very open, very approachable, and cares a lot. He used to have a cabin up in Brighton, and I think still has property up there, so he is familiar with the Cottonwood Canyons. And I know he likes to hike, so he likes to kind of meet with constituents that way. But I think he would be very open to hearing. In my experience, he seemed very open to hearing our concerns and constituent concerns.
You know, he had a very short response, but was dear Mayor Burke, thank you for your generous and thoughtful invitation to visit Alta this summer. I can't imagine a more refreshing prospect than a day among your legendary wildflowers, good hike in a fresh mountain air, and the chance to meet with your town council residents. If a moose is in the sighting, I'm in the mix. I'm all in. Your town holds a special place in Utah's landscape, not just for the world-class skiing, but for its natural beauty and vibrant community spirit year-round. So we'll appreciate with appreciation and warm regards, Senator Curtis. So
Well written.
yeah. I got the feeling he actually wrote it himself.
Yeah, I was parsing that out myself. It was like, is that a staffer or is that him? I think that.
Okay, anyway. Next item, as I think you're all aware, the town council voted to purchase OLS from the church. Terms of that purchase are under discussion and it's in, it is the intention of the town that this change in ownership will have minimal adverse impact on ACE's use of that building. Now we'll be negotiating with that arrangement with ACE toward that end. The Central Wasatch Commission, on which the town is a member, annually funds what they call short-term projects. They're on the order of 10K or so. They recently announced their award for this year, which includes some that benefit Alta. One is a partial funding of the Friends of Alta Board monitoring program, which is hoping to operate a year-round and feature a live online video stream to monitor black rose finches and other species. And then there are others that benefit Alta indirectly. One is the maintenance by the Salt Lake Climbers Alliance of aging fixed rock anchor hardware on climbing routes in the Central Wasatch, and a continuing partnership with the Wasatch Backcountry Alliance to provide Sanity Backcountry ski shuttle, and the Cottonwood Canyon Foundation trail maintenance and invasive weed control. Our contribution, the town's contribution to CWC has been 15K a year. And we always kind of look at that and say, are we getting our money's worth? And I think we are, although that's, you know, a judgment we have to collectively make. Once again, I want to remind citizens that 3 terms on the town council, 1, 2, and 3 over there on the board, are up at the end of this year, and signups to fill those expiring terms are from June 1st through 6th, and they have to be in person in the town office during business hours, 8 to 5, right? Or 9 to 5, 9 to 5. Okay, good.
Or just reach out to me and
All right, and you'll
I'll
do it.
make a special situation if you can't get there between those hours.
Okay, got it. Chris and I attended the mid-year Utah League of Cities and Towns conference last month. There was a chance to meet with others in similar positions in sister towns and to learn how to do our jobs better, plus cement relationships. I learned a lot about wildflowers, communications during emergencies, and dealing with conflict. And since we live in the wild urban interface, the more we know about this, the better prepared we will be. Chris writes more extensively about this in his report. I thought it was a worthwhile endeavor.
The conference?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
The Alta Environmental Center has issued a summer stewardship and education calendar, which is full of terrific events. I hope to see you at some of them. The 44th annual Canyon Cleanup Day is June 10th. And it's open to residents and employees of Alta and Snowbird. And Molly can tell us how to register.
Yeah, we have an online sign up form, same as we did last year. You can just find it right now. The easiest way is just the homepage of our website. It's.
And I think this is a really kind of neat community service that the citizens play and, you know, help get this place trash free and keep it beautiful. And you know what comes next?
We're waiting for it to appear.
Nice, Fred.
Okay, Cosmos 482. You named them.
I was hoping we were going to learn about this today.
Are you? Good, okay, good. Well, you may have read that a Soviet spacecraft that was intended to land on Venus entered the Earth's atmosphere last week, which is a long way from Venus.
Oh.
Yes. It didn't go to Venus at all. In fact, it never really got out of Earth orbit. In the era when this was launched, 1970, the Soviets were having a lot of trouble with launch vehicles, and so were we, for that matter.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they would get something up into what's known as a transfer orbit, but they could never reignite their propulsion system and get it off to Venus. So it stayed with us here on Earth. And so then what happened? Well, let me turn the clock back 400 years and talk about a German astronomer whose name was Johannes Kepler, who discovered that the planets went around the sun in elliptic orbits. And he didn't know it, but all gravitationally captured items go around their parent body in elliptic orbits too, and he didn't know that about Earth orbits, because there's only one, it's called the moon, and they really didn't study that very well. So what happens when you're in an elliptic orbit is the one that's illustrated here. It has a low point called a perigee, which is down there at the bottom, and a high point called an apogee, which is there at the top. Now, as we all experience, the density of the air goes down as we go up in elevation, but it never goes to zero. Actually, at satellite altitudes, particularly low satellite altitudes, there's still a lot of air molecules around. And when the spacecraft comes around and comes to this low point in its orbit, which is called the perigee, it encounters these air molecules and loses energy to those. And what that does is it slows the orbiter down a little bit. But it doesn't change position, it still stays at the same altitude. But what happens, because it has slowed it down at the bottom of the screen, the bottom of this figure, it is the energy of the orbit has been lost, and what happens is the apogee, the thing up at the top, comes down. And so what happens is that the orbit shrinks from the high point down. And eventually, in this case, what's 1970 to 2025, it shrinks down to its actually circular. And now it's hitting air molecules all the way around. And so it's losing energy all the time. And because it's now losing it constantly, it's very hard to figure out where it's going to lose enough that it actually dives into the atmosphere. And that's why it's hard to predict where the impact will be. Turns out it was in the Indian Ocean or something like that, but it could have been actually anywhere along the orbit. So that's.
Are there other things floating out there we should be worrying about?
Now the reason
Trash island.
that this is of concern is because almost all spacecraft that enter the Earth's atmosphere burn up. And that's because they're really quite fragile. I mean, you build them to be very lightweight and, no more structure than you really need. And so when they get heated, and they're traveling 18,000 miles an hour and they hit the atmosphere, things get hot at those temperatures, those speeds. And so they almost always burn up, and you have some small degree occasionally that get to the surface. But in this case, this spacecraft was built to enter the atmosphere and survive to the surface of Venus. And it has an atmosphere that's about 100 times more dense than ours. So it was very rugged when it comes to entry. And that's why it was concerned, there was concern that it would survive and attack to the surface, which it probably did, but nobody saw it because it went in the ocean. So don't lose any sleep over it.
But to give the Soviets a credit, they were still the first people to land a lander on Venus and have it report back real
Correct,
data for an hour.
correct. In fact, the
I thought it was
United
impressive.
States has never had a.
That's right. They're the only ones who've done it.
No.
Does it have a solid surface?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's about 100 G for gravity.
Oh, no, the gravity's not high. It's,
I thought it was-
no, it's the surface pressure that's so high.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, but no, Venus is only slightly smaller than the Earth. So on the gravitational, if you stood on Venus, first you'd evaporate quickly. As long as you were there, you would not really feel much difference in your weight. Okay. All right, so next bullet, I'll be out of the country from May 20th to June 3rd. And Mayor Pro Tem Elise will be acting mayor, and should any mayoral duties arise or needed. And the next town council meeting is Wednesday, June 18th, which is later.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I look at my calendar too.
Well, I think. Oh, because the 19th is Juneteenth, sorry, not the 18th. I just want to make sure we have that right, because we did that last year. Okay, yes, the 18th.
Okay, at 4 p.m.
Correct.
All right,
Yeah, so it's just a little later than normal.
okay. That ends the mayor report.
Those crazy Soviets.
They were very persistent. Okay, Chris.
Okay, so somewhat in the spirit of having Nate come, despite the facilities planning project not being fully complete, providing an update on the water and sewer planning. Again, similarly, because we're doing the budget, we're starting to get some hard numbers for what improvements to our water and sewer utilities are gonna cost. We've been discussing a few of those for the past couple of months. Obviously, we're moving forward to implement water project right now. It's a whole bunch of pipe in the Wildcat parking lot if you want to see what we just bought. But we've got draft master plans from the engineers, and I wanted to get this material before you today to help couch a little bit of a short-term decision we could make to do a small sewer improvement, potentially reduce the cost of doing a major sewer improvement for the future. If it were not for that last bit, I might have waited on this presentation. But anyway, so we have the draft master plans. We didn't as of the last council meeting. We're reviewing them with the service providers. They're really great documents. They include all of the analysis and modeling we reviewed previously, some reflections on source capacity, and current and future system connections, growth on the system, things like that. The key components of the capital improvement plans, we've got all those. We've got the three projects that we've been looking at to improve fire flows and system storage. We've got an additional project that's kind of a holdover from the 2014 study that they've worked out high level cost estimates for and recommend we fund. And then we've got sewer projects now. We've got quite a few of them actually, and then we've got recommendations for how to fund pipeline replacement on both systems over time, which is kind of a key piece we've always been missing. Here's the water plan. You've basically seen this graphic before, but the one thing that may have changed is that so we've got the crossed line is the red line. The yellow line down there on the left side is a connection between Peruvian Acres and East Hellgate. But these are really all from the 2014 study. They've kind of ground truth the alignments, updated the modeling, and updated the cost estimates. So again, the projects are the crossed line, which we are doing, the Hellgate loop connection, and then a replacement of some asbestos concrete pipe along Highway 210, more or less to complete that Hellgate loop. And then finally, the big, we have a need for really quite a bit of additional, 500,000 gallons of additional storage capacity So you can see the updated cost estimates there for those projects on the right, and those are the 4 projects they recommend. Rolling out in roughly the next 10 years on the water system. The sewer system, we've got more recommendations for short-term projects than we were anticipating. The green is the notorious gold miner's daughter to Peruvian line SAG. We've got a blue line there, which is the line again between East Peruvian and Hellgate. And then they're recommending we do some work on the sewer line that's essentially up to the Grizzly Gulch homes, connecting down to the cat shop, which we weren't necessarily anticipating. So here's a look at the cost estimates for those sewer projects. So we see a total of about $1 million of projects over the next 10 years. And there's a bit more detail in the plans themselves on why they recommend what their findings were in reviewing the TV camera footage for the sewer line and things like that. For long-term pipeline recommendations, they basically, assess the total amount of pipe in the system and then recommend we save a certain amount per year over. They recommend 25 years. And that's generally that's the sort of standard practice for water and sewer systems. But those are pretty big numbers to just sort of plug into our budgets, obviously on top of the capital needs that they're recommending we address in the next 10 years. So
Are you saying that the capital, the infrastructure replacement they're recommending 150 on that?
Yes.
Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, really on both systems.
It's the same number for each?
Yes.
Is that Keith's company then, or is that,
No,
it's these other
this
guys?
is,
It's this other, okay, I just want to make sure I was tracking.
There's the engineering firm that mostly does water and sewer. Yeah, so you can dig into these numbers a little bit more and see what the total replacement cost is. It's interesting to see that they find the cost to do all the sewer projects, including those, the standalone projects they recommend in 10 years. Time is a little bit more than the cost to replace all the water pipe. There's also, and I don't think I have a bullet on this, but they provide a narrative around what these cost estimates are at this depth. And these are master planning level cost estimates. So they assume that if they give you a number, the range is anywhere between half of that to twice as much. So that's really all they can do until they get into design.
Yeah.
And surveying and see what stuff costs whenever they're getting around to that. So, we did ask them to consider the to consider the utility connections to the West Grizzly neighborhood. This has been a topic of discussion now for, 6 or 7 years. Those are 3, there's 3 homes up there. What is there? One more buildable lot, I believe, Craig?
One more. Oh, 2 more.
2 more. They're on holding tanks. They're on they're along like an 1.5 inch water line, but for black water disposal for sewage, they are on holding tanks, which are serviced via the Michigan City Road. Hummers up there funded a conceptual engineering study, it looks like 6 years ago. Hanson Allen Luce studied that alignment, provided an updated cost estimate. As you can see, their estimate is that it would be a pretty expensive project. And obviously, we've got all this information now, which we'll have to, dig into more about what it's going to take to remedy existing deficiencies on the system. So before we're talking about expanding the system, we have to really get our heads around. We ought to get our heads around what we're going to do to remedy deficiencies on the existing system. But this has been a project, a topic of discussion for a little while because there are some really strong upsides to considering it. The homes are in the Bay City Tunnel source protection area. Our water and sewer operators have really recommended we consider, one way or another, extending the sewer up there because of that. Obviously, it's a long alignment and the slope especially between the Grizzly parking area and the neighborhood is steep. And according to the engineers, that makes it expensive. And of course, it doesn't serve, you know, a vast subdivision, it just serves a couple of homes, but you know, again, due to the location of those homes relative to the Bay City Tunnel and sort of chaotic nature of the Michigan City Road, getting you know, pump trucks up there. I think it's something we ought to you know, keep on the horizon and consider as we start to work through some of these recommendations.
Can pause that?
Yeah.
So, there are homes in, the Albion Basin area that you could make the same argument.
Oh, yeah.
For, sewer and water contamination. Does, doing this for West Grizzly, put us at risk for someone from, the cabins from either suing us, pursuing, their sewer, because those homes are also on like a really tricky road and they
Oh,
get
yeah.
their things pumped all the time too, so
Yeah.
I have.
No.
I know that's been part of the picture on this, and I guess Polly?
Sorry.
The precedents,
I don't think we're
the precedents
obligated
could be
to,
problematic for us.
Yes, and I'm just wondering what that, cause, you live there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and you have town water, correct?
Town water, not town sewer.
Okay,
Correct.
and so I guess, I don't know, I just worried about that, sorry.
Water service.
So I can say something about that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if that restricts our ability to provide sewer up there, but.
Oh.
You know, in around 1976, there was a deal made with Illinois Public Foods, or what it was called then, that the town could serve those properties which were in the current town boundaries. And this one is in the current town boundaries, or in the 1976 boundaries. And it's the only place, as far as I know, that is eligible for water, which it has, but doesn't have sewer. So that distinguishes it from the.
Certainly, I just know it's been a hot button issue, so I swear that-
It's a hot button issue.
It's also a vastly longer and more sophisticated alignment, like it
Yeah.
would cost millions of dollars.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah,
would not want to pay the millions of
Up there.
dollars to.
And then there'd be so many more connections, I mean, it would like.
Right.
Yeah.
it's
And
such a
it's also
project.
different because those homes were purchased knowing that there was town water. And the homes up there were purchased knowing that there was no town water.
Yeah, let me make a couple of very quick comments. One, I have talked to Dan about, you know, doing some joint funding with you guys, and I think that's entirely possible. Two, I hadn't really thought about the risk aspect of being so close to the Bay City Tunnel, that's a
Yeah,
good
it's
point.
technically in a source protection area that the
Yeah.
state identifies.
And the
That's
third
what
one is, there may be an alternative, but I don't know enough yet about it in terms of there's some new technology to actually clean up the water and things like that. So that they don't have to be emptied so often, so. Just all of those, he's not asking to make the decision now, I'm just telling you that that's what's going on.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sorry.
It's a totally fair point. Polly, did you want to say something? You had sort of unmuted.
No, well, you guys look like you were asking me a question, but it was answered, I think, by Mayor Burke, that the area where that Salt Lake City can serve is only within the boundaries at the time in I think it was 76.
Right.
So this is kind of the,
Sharon Byrne has a question.
oh, sorry.
Hi, just a couple quick comments. The one thing that never really gets, or I don't hear often in this discussion, is that the property owners, it's their responsibility to contain the black water, and they're currently doing that. But they knew that when they bought the property. I'm not really in favor of the idea that we would spend all the money, but I would support what Craig was referring to. It's sort of a public-private collaboration here, you know, something like splitting the cost with the existing homeowners, between the town and the existing homeowners. I could probably wrap my arms around that. I do think we'd have better water source protection if we weren't relying on them to contain their sewage, but it is their responsibility. So I don't think it should be a free ride. And, I think the homeowners should proposition us about some kind of a collaborative effort to run the sewer, to connect the sewer line. In the short run, though, I very much support the $5,000. That's an incredible gift from the ski area to upsize the pipe for $5,000. We should definitely do this.
Okay, what, I appreciate you cutting to the chase on that, although it's, so, okay, let me just start from the beginning, so right, the ski area's got a couple big buildings, and some, associated utility work going on in the Albion parking lot this summer. The cold storage building will be along the north edge of the Albion parking lot. It's gonna have a sewer connection. I forget how it came about. I think it was in plan review, basically. Somebody, it may have been Steve McIntosh. Steve, did Steve join the call, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were reviewing the utility plans with Steve and Casey, and noted that this would entail, essentially bringing the sewer line much closer to West Grizzly than it would be otherwise. So the ski area, went to the contractor and talked about what it would take to upsize the lateral. And the first time we talked to them about it, it was gonna be $5,000 to buy a bigger pipe and presumably dig a bigger trench. But yesterday we heard that they have, they determined that because it's an 8-inch pipe, it technically qualifies as a sewer main and thus needs a manhole. So we think that's potentially an additional $5,000 to $7,000. And then we get into the question of whether, what kind of approval this needs from like a state agency. And so then we have to talk about engineering. I'm sure it would not be a substantial engineering project, and maybe it wouldn't need to be engineered, but all of this is to say that we, more than $5,000, it hopefully would be less than, I don't know, 15 or something like that. So Steve, I don't know if you want to add any more color to that.
So
Steve is very powerful, so.
can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I kind of started this. One of my fears is having a 400-foot sewer lateral with cleanouts every 100 feet. That's problematic from a sewer operations standpoint. We talked to Dan Foxman, and the lift company does have cleanouts. Cats go over it, plows go over it. I mean, it's all doable, but that's when I came up with the idea. And I said, well, Chris, if we're going to put a 400-foot lateral in, why don't we just upsize it, connect in the new cold storage, and then if and when the Navy gets built up in Grizzly, we could just tie into the upside of it and go from there. So that's where the pipe cost came from, and the contractor is probably correct. It should have a manhole. Whether we can do it without a manhole, I don't know yet. I haven't got into that much of it. But you will need engineering. I don't know that you're really going to need a lot of state approvals on it because it's such a small amount of footage as far as sewer projects go. But it looks to me like it could be almost 30% of that line going to West Grizzly. So, he's got this budgeted as 173,000 in savings. That's a big deal to me, because I'm still going through that whole master plan, and that's a well done document, but I do have questions. I want to talk to them about some of the stuff they found in Grizzly, since that pipe is probably only literally 15 years old and it's plastic. So I want to know how they came to the determination that that needs to be replaced. That's all going to be going in as we continue to review that master plan. But to save $200,000 to spend 12 to 17 or so, and then have the potential of getting that tied in so we can get the sewage out of the source protection zone. That's a big deal in my book. We've had issues there before of the holding tanks overflowing. There's been 2 times that I know of that we've had to pump all the way from up there down to the Bay City mine because there was an issue. And, you know, it's not an issue in the winter that you can sit there and say, well, I'll deal with it in the summer. It's imminent danger to the water of the town and the watershed in general. So that's how the whole thing started. If you guys have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer some.
I remember Keith making a pretty strong statement along lines you did that this is an imminent threat to the main water supply of the town. And that while the homeowners there so far have done a great job of containing it, stuff happens.
And I apologize, isn't it the same argument for the Albion Basin that somebody doesn't go to their cabin all the time and they don't fill their tank and their tank overflows and gets in the contamination of water? Or is it just because of the location next to the Bay City mine that's what makes it more important?
I think that Upper Albion Basin is actually technically in the Bay City source protection area as well.
So the Bay City source protection area is actually on the north side of the road. I will tell you the Wasatch Drain Tunnel source protection area does go all the way into Albion Basin. But the Bay City in general, that whole mine workings does not go up there. It just goes into the north side and it goes over into part of Big Cottonwood as well.
They aren't distinguishable.
Okay.
Bay City, Town of Alta, Albion Basin, Snowbird.
Yeah, that's actually, John's got a conversation, the right questions. And Salt Lake City, because it's gonna go into the creek and go right out.
Yeah, I definitely think creating a pathway to add this section to the town sewer system makes sense. I don't mean to be obstinate about it and say it has to be a cost sharing, but it is their responsibility to contain spills, and whenever they're going to be relieved of that, that's a significant improvement. They're going to see a significant enhancement in the value of their properties. So, you know, if we need to finance it for them, or we need to do it in some cooperative way, beyond just sharing the cost, you know, I could be open to that. But I think that those homeowners should proposition the town as to covering the balance of the pipe. But today we're just focusing on putting in a main from the cold storage down to the to tie to the rope to the town.
And it's not even
rope tow area.
Yeah, it's not even a whole main. I mean, the ski area is really putting the pipe in. We'd just be buying them a different pipe and maybe an appurtenance to it. So it's really not gonna get any cheaper for anyone.
Seems like a great deal for us from the ski area. Seems to be giving us a great deal. I think we should do it.
So I appreciate your advocacy, John. You know, 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon was not like a great time to get the call, but they just sort of scrambled my sense of what we were gonna do about this. I don't think they're not gonna install the sewer until like August. I think what I'd like to do is just keep working on a scope, trying to understand the scope of what this would be. And then maybe we can get, I just heard from the ski area that we won't need to pay them until next year, so it's no longer a fiscal 20, I don't think it needs to be a fiscal 25 consideration. It's something that we can think about for another few weeks.
So what's the suspense on a decision to them? Is it after the next town council meeting? Because that would also give us maneuver room.
You ask that question again?
Well, when do you owe them an answer on this? If it's after the next town council meeting, I think that gives a lot of flexibility to what you want to do, because then you can present it here and get it approved or denied next town council.
And I'm gonna say that this just falls into exactly what we were talking about from the beginning. Any estimate that I'm gonna give you could be half or twice.
Yeah.
And so when you say that it might cost, you know,
Well,
Well, the
If it's
small
just-
project, the small project's not gonna turn into millions. The cost of running it up the hill, that would need to be
That's different.
thoroughly estimated. But this small piece of line, I mean, we could, you know, encourage Chris up to like $25,000 or something, or give him 20,000, say up to $20,000, you know, go ahead, or. I just hate to see us miss the opportunity because of the meeting schedule.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great to me.
Well, can we do that? Can we authorize a ceiling of 25K on this and ask him to proceed?
So moved.
Well,
Second,
Agree.
any discussion?
I don't,
On the agenda.
Sorry,
No,
it's not on the
It's not on the
agenda.
agenda, we can't do it.
Okay.
but
But you've given him your
yeah, I mean,
collective
it's helpful,
feelings and
this is rough,
sense.
yeah.
Yes, but I don't think we can officially.
Dare I say blessing in our state.
Yes.
All right,
thanks. What's next?
what's
Budget.
next is presentation of the 2025 budget.
We're back, we're 2
Yeah.
minutes beyond schedule.
Yeah, we're
You were
actually,
ahead before, that was awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
The presentation. Yeah, that one.
All right.
You understand?
I'll stand with you.
Okay.
Together.
Oh, that's fun.
We're gonna.
There we go.
Go ahead.
We're-
I too ain't gonna stand, take it back.
Okay. So
Good idea.
you have not received, yeah, feels really good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You haven't received this presentation, our apologies, for not getting this out in advance. You did receive the budget document, the tentative budget document, so we're hoping to shed some light on that with this presentation. I will say, the budget committee met on a series of 3 meetings. I think, budget committee again, Mayor Burke, Craig Highmark, Dan Schilling, myself and Chris, and this is the budget that we are recommending to the town council.
Everyone's standing.
These slides are really, these are a distillation of the slides that we've been sort of building up through the budget committee process. So if you've been tuned in to those at all, you've probably seen the bulk of this material.
We also kind of approached it just trying to make it higher level for the council and shorten up our presentation as well. So financial planning, you know, the town is talking a lot about, you know, we used to just plan for the year in front of us. Now we're starting to really try and think 10, 15, 20, 25 years out. So we just want to point that out. Chris, do you want to hit on the capital ones, the bullet point 2?
Sure, so, right, the high level topic of discussion in, or the couple high level topics are facilities and water and sewer. Big question in terms of facilities is, what will the town's first major facility project be? So that's kind of the goal for next year, is to try to make that decision. And then for water and sewer planning, you know, we've been sort of dug into that a little bit more thoroughly. What you'll see in the slides and in the capital projects plan assumes essentially biannual capital projects on the water and sewer system, which is not necessarily the way it's gonna go, but the only way we know how to, it's how we've been thinking about, you know, rate increases and fund balances and all that over the past couple of years. Our Lady of the Snow is obviously a big and late breaking topic. We do have the purchase price included in fiscal 26 budget and capital projects plan. And of course, we're working with the community in Richmond on a lease agreement.
And then just financial plan, we just wanted to call out compensation since it's such a big portion of the budget. We're, you know, annually updating the worth of work framework, we're utilizing that. And we are hopefully maybe like early next week, we're gonna post the actual position for, or maybe the end of this week, I don't know. The 5th officer. And we also have our full-time sworn officers in the URS public safety system, so just some other big high-level updates. This slide is basically our approach to the revenue section of the budget. This slide in particular is mostly focused on the general fund in particular. We wanted to call out that we are proposing a $100,000 increase to property taxes. So going from 405 to 505,000. The sales tax projection, we have kept the same as the current year's projection. We used to use an average of 3 years. But we've decided to change that method up a little bit and just use the current year's FY25's projection. We think that's just gonna be a more realistic number for us. We have not, there's been talk, about potentially imposing the transient room tax, a 1% transient room tax. But the budget committee felt like with everything else that's going on, would like to hold off on that for this year and not be proposing that with this new tentative budget. But I do want to point out that my estimates on the potential revenue from that, tax would be around $200,000, so just keep that in mind for the future. And then one of the new things that we're doing that we have, at least since I've been town clerk, we have not done in the past, is budgeting for cash on hand. And so this is basically, I don't know if creative is the right word, but way of basically using that to help subsidize the budget, I guess is maybe a fair way to frame it. And then the shuttle program, we kind of wanted to call that out just since it is such a big portion of the budget, and we have some more information on that later. This slide is slightly different than some of the other slides that we've done in the budget committee, and basically what I've done is I've added in the comparison. We had a similar slide actually for the budget last year. But this basically shows you the difference between the current FY25 year budget, and that's the current approved budget. And the tentative 26 budget. I do want to point out that this is across, this is the summary, so it's all 4 funds, so general fund, capital projects fund, sewer and water. These are kind of when we, on a monthly basis, I do the combined 1 pager. These are the same buckets that we use for that 1-page summary of where things stand. So the one thing about the kind of interesting thing about this is the number that stands out the most is in the water fund, and it's where you show in 2026. You have the 900,000 there, and the reason for that is the revenue coming in to support the Crosstow project and the capital projects. So that kind of skews it a little bit. I could have backed it out, but because I'm just kind of like using the formulas from the way our budget works, that's the true number of the revenue that we're needing in the budget. Does anybody have any questions about that? Or any of the numbers on this slide?
Is this a good time to talk about the use of the general fund reserve?
Sure.
Yeah, so as far as I know, this is really the first time we've done this, where we've taken money from the general fund reserve and we're using it to supplement the capital projects fund. I think that's worth noting. There was a time after the pandemic where we were directing the clerk, or try, as we're supposed to through ordinance and resolution, to try to maintain 1 year's revenue in reserve. I agree that now seems excessive, and maybe there's some extra money there. Somewhere in the slides or the budget committee slides, you were saying, this is a limited or one-time type opportunity. It's a depleting asset. This isn't something we're going to be able to go back to the bucket over and over. We're going to take 10% now. That's going to get us down to sort of 90% of 1 year. I do think we should try to give some thought to what the right number for the general fund reserve is, and then try to honor that. And that's not.
So John.
What's that?
Oh, I was just gonna point out that if you're just looking at the general fund, our budget is roughly 3.4 million this year. Right? So this represents, out of that, it's 10%, right? Pretty close to. So that would bring, so just this act alone, right, would bring us down to like 90% of that 100,000 threshold. So I'm sure you're, does that help at all?
90% of
you're
the
asking-
100,000 threshold?
Or the 100%.
Oh, right, so we'll be at 90, yeah, we'll just be 10% under the old threshold of 100% of 1 year.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe the right number is 50%, like we shouldn't go below 50% and we could adjust that 100%. At some point, I think we should actually do that by resolution. Just so that it's a clear path and whatever. I thought there was an old resolution, but I was unable to find it. Did we do a resolution to support the 100%?
When we say that, the comment that you were just making, you've given instruction to the town clerk when we approve the budget to keep, when we do like the certified tax rate, we do the transfer to the capital projects. You've in those resolutions said to keep the general fund level at 100%. So you're right.
So at some point we should revise that just so that we're not acting contrary to a resolution. Doesn't have to be.
Well,
today. But Jen, what number are you comfortable going down to? 70 or 80, 50? What number makes sense to you?
I mean, I always appreciated the 100% because I think just, you know, if the town of us just being a small entity, and if we run into some trouble, I just feel like it might take us a little bit longer. But you know, what is that situation gonna be and what are the other resources that are gonna be available? It's hard to comprehend right now.
It's a bit of a tricky thing, and you know, you can't imagine the property tax number really changing dramatically. I think the number that would change would be sales tax revenue if we had another pandemic or we had a no snow year or something like that. So we could think about, you know, what the variability of that really is. No question, 100% is a more secure and conservative place for us to be, but you know, we've had a big expenditure, we need to adjust, and you got to play the cards you're dealt. And I'm comfortable going to 90, but it wouldn't bother me to go back to 100 over the next couple of years. And either way, I think we should set a number and try to stick with it. And if that number is 70 or that number is 80, we should try to stick to it.
Would that require a resolution,
Well,
or is it
so-
wise to do a resolution?
Well, what I was gonna point out is, so when we pass the resolutions with that instruction in the past, it's been tied to a certain budget year, so we haven't done like a blanketed statement, so we could take that approach. The other thing, and I'm kind of gonna get into the weeds a little bit here now, for later, but the thing that's not included in the general fund budget currently is the loan that we're talking about to the water fund for the Crossfield project. And so that also is gonna reduce us below that 90% number too. So, but we don't believe that loan is gonna be much more than, I think, like 250,000. So it's, I'm still comfortable with that situation, but
it could
to
be another
continue to talk about
10%. It could be another 10% at the outside. That would bring us down to 80%, right?
Yep.
John, if I might interrupt or just make a few comments at the risk of sounding like things you said in the past. I think that we remember that reserve serves two purposes. One is working capital. And the other one is variance in the income stream. And I think in order to come up with a target, you want to decompose those things. And particularly in the working capital side, I think we'd be a lot better if we did a monthly budgeting process, because that's what you need to do to figure out what your maximum drawdown is on the working capital side. And I also think that your point about looking at the main sources of our income and maybe doing some variance analysis on that, I don't think that's not a crap ton of work. I think we could easily get that done, this summer, but I would suggest that, if you want to set a target number, that you would want it informed by that level of analysis.
I agree with everything you just said, and I appreciate Dan's willingness to go ahead and set it, to set a target, pass a resolution, that makes me feel like we're all on the same page. I don't think we're quite there mathematically. I think the analysis Craig is talking about, I mean, really, we need to look at the last, say, 10 years of sales tax revenue, calculate the median, and then look at the variance from the median over 10 years. What was the range of outcomes? That would, I mean, it's something we could do this summer for sure. Once we do that, I think we should pass a resolution and set the limit.
Yeah, because I don't understand this well enough to weigh in one way or the other, 70, 80, 90. It's very, sounds arbitrary to me. I fear that.
It's noteworthy that we're going under 100, and as Jen points out, including the water fund loan, it could end up being sort of 80 or 85. So we need to pay a little more attention here and come up with the right number for the 26 fiscal year.
I don't have any experience with it, so I defer to you guys.
Yeah, also do remember, John, that 100% number was set not by us, it's the maximum that's allowed by law. So what it means is we were the most conservative that we could possibly be. Now, I'm gonna argue that we should be because we have unusual concentration risk in our income stream. But again, I think this would be a lot better if we just do a little bit of analysis on this and then come back to that.
I'd be happy to work on that. I'd be happy to work on that with you, Craig. And I agree. I think that we have an unusual risk structure, probably more risk, more concentrated risk on sales tax revenue than almost any other. I mean, maybe Brighton has the same, but because of our dependence on the sales tax revenue from the ski season being, such a big part of our overall revenue stream.
If you guys do that, then that comes into the budget committee. That's the inject point, because it seems like the natural place for you guys to make progress and bring some expertise to bear. That sounds pretty cool to me.
This really ties to what Craig was talking about at the retreat with the standard deviation, how many two standard deviation approach, and what does the probability curve actually look like? This is really what he was talking about in that moment. Okay.
This is a very, very rough draft of what potential property tax increase would be. I'm still waiting on data from the county, so I've just used some previous year's averages, so I'm not hanging my hat on any of this stuff. But it should be ballpark. So Roger, you can see down there, the very bottom row is your price per million. And you can see the change, that it was increased by about $400. And this is per $1 million evaluation.
And this is for 25, and then 26 is gonna be higher.
No, we're going into fiscal year 25.
And the annotations in that top row using. Right, so those are the tax years.
Right.
We're talking about the 2025 tax year, as opposed to the 2024 tax year.
Okay.
Yes.
And the law is such that you can't just give more money to the town of Alta, you have to give more money to everybody.
No,
They all set their own rates.
yeah.
That's why it's kind of an effective thing.
So really, Carolyn, what we're just talking about right now really is this number change, everything else is the same.
That's all set by the
This is
county.
right, and so some of these other levies actually might also increase, but we don't know that information yet.
Okay.
But we should have more information by the June, July meetings for sure on that. And then we would do a truth and taxation hearing in August.
So those by far the biggest number is our guess for the first substantive agenda on tax bills, the school district.
Yeah, which.
Obviously,
Yeah.
cheaper than jail.
Well, and it doesn't fund the residents of the town, because it's mostly kids that come from downtown that we pay for.
Right.
Well, the thing you need to remember as you look at these tax rate increases over time is we also now are paying directly for our fire protection, where we used to that used to be included in the Alta property taxation. And we didn't get individual bills for our, what is it, UFA and what's for the fire protection? UFSA, the other one.
Yeah, so I wanted to give some indication of, you know, again, ballpark numbers, what we were looking at, just so that people don't maybe get too scared, but we'll have better numbers here soon. This is a slide on starting to just kind of preface truth in taxation and why we need to go through it and what our rationale in the budget is. Key points being, you know, tax revenue is, we're proposing to raise it. Property tax revenue. Last reason.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
revenue and the rate will go up because of that, yeah.
And this is the kind of like the every other year, the first is what the council is kind of informally guided us to do, is to consider truth in taxation every other year. I did want to point out that this $100,000 increase, that portion of the revenue is about 15% of the general funds revenue. So, you know, 15%. Other key reasons that we need to go through this are compensation increases to payroll following the WOW framework. You know, we're adding staff members here. Adding, you know, we're purchasing a new building, which is gonna add additional staff time and things like that to the town. You know, the project piece, I know, you know, Craig's been really integral in this and Chris, but the projects, you know, we've been focused on projects, we're doing projects, we're executing them, that's just, we're doing more.
We're doing more and it costs more.
Yep,
I mean, that's.
yeah,
Yeah, but you know, it ties back to what several people, both staff and elected, say over repeatedly, which is we're strategically engaging on preparing the town for its future. To, you know, be well
Position
so, yes, both in facilities and, you know.
and physically.
Yep.
You know, resilience is the word that comes to mind. You know, we're making the town more resilient.
And I appreciate this explanation as a taxpayer, and I feel good about it. I'm curious why, as a budget committee, you did not elect to do the 1% bed tax, because for me, having increased people here decreases my enjoyment of my space, and now you're asking me to pay more money. So I guess I would really advocate for the other $200,000 to come from those guys instead of me. Pardon me? Yeah, I mean,
The room tax, yeah, you call that bed tax.
I think,
yeah, I call it a bed tax, sorry, whatever. It's just interesting because the very few property owners are asked to pay for the enjoyment of our guests to our lovely community. Seems like our guests should pay to come to our house.
That's a good argument.
Yes, a good question.
Yeah.
And I wanna start with what Jen said at the beginning, which is, I'm really happy, because now I've been associated with this group for 3+ years. At the very beginning, what we identified is an annual budgeting process that only has a time horizon of 12 months, doesn't build in a lot of resilience, I'll use that word. And frankly, I don't think it's responsible for the town council to look only with the 12-month time frame. So we're starting to do that. This is the first time we're really starting to do it, and it's difficult. And one of the things that we're coming to grips with is, you know what, the estimates of this stuff have a lot of variance, you know, whether it's 50 to 100% or whatever, it's a lot. So we're trying to come to grips with that. Here's what I will tell you, there is no way through this without doing a bond issue and without increasing taxes. As if we're going to be responsible and start, you know, accumulating for all of the water and the sewer and the building stuff that we have. So then the question is, when do we do the property increase? When do we do the increases? Roger and maybe it was John Byrne as well, push back on, you know, we've got to limit the tax increases for the property because of exactly the reason that you described.
But what we felt was if we're gonna increase other taxes, to me, this property tax increase is really just keeping up with
Yes.
the increase in the valuation. So in my parlance, it's not an increase because it's not an increase in the rate, you're just trying to keep up. So we thought that was okay to do this year, but the other stuff are bigger issues. And we feel like we've got to have another sort of offsite with the town council to go through all the numbers. And then we gotta get the town on board. And we've got to start putting forward, oh, we've got this building we've gotta do, we've gotta do this water stuff. Now, they could conceivably say, we're not in favor of that, okay, and then we have to deal with that. But I don't think you wanna do the increase other than keeping up with the inflation stuff until after we've had both a town council offsite, and have involved the town in where the increases are gonna go and get their support. That's why Dan was pushing the idea of, okay, now that we got some ideas what the buildings are gonna be, we gotta start having them out. So it's really to get the town support.
But I think I will add something to that, because one of the reasons, as it's explained to me and my understanding thus far, one of the reasons I'm in favor of the TRT is it's passed through construction to the people who come here. I think while it might have been John that said this, but I don't remember, somebody had said, it's like, well, it's another thing that we don't want to levy on our businesses. But to me, I don't think it's gonna significantly inhibit people coming here when this gets added to their hotel room bill. And it's good for the town at about 200 grand a year.
Yeah.
That goes a long way over 5 years to funding a building that we're trying to bond for to improve public safety. So I'm a fan of it, but when we were in this budget meeting, I will also tell you, I was in agreement with everybody else that let's not sticker shock our town. Cause more pitchforks and torches are not what the town needs at the moment.
No, I agree.
Well, you also need to recognize that the reality has been that the sales tax revenue has grown much, much more rapidly than property tax revenue without sales tax rate increases. Like there's more business and we're getting more sales tax revenue. So that's a bit of an offset to what Carolyn was saying there. Balance. I think you're gonna see that the lodges feel very differently about the incremental tax value. And they're gonna, the last time we raised one of the taxes on the gas, we really heard a ton about it. So I don't think it should be an annual, let's change the tax rate. And their argument that, look at the revenue number is growing 8 or 10% on its own each year. Why are you having to change the rate? It's a pretty good argument, really.
Yeah, I think that was the core of your argument when you brought it up a couple meetings ago, John, either a special meeting or something.
Yeah.
And just to be clear on the sales tax stuff, you're given a tool chest of things that you can impose. And so we've imposed everything we can outside of this 1% municipal transient room tax. So if we did that, we would be at the top and we would have, unless something else happens, that we would be stuck there.
Yeah, and also it's our last opportunity to get more revenue out of this taxable sales that are occurring in Alta. And we're still absent that, only 15% the property tax revenue. So we're really dependent on sales tax revenue, and that's not a really sustainable model. Moab actually didn't have a property tax until this year when they instituted, I believe, a property tax that's twice as high as ours. So they were actually more concentrated.
Yeah.
More cool.
Well, it's not just now the sustainability of it, it's all the more reason to stick to the 100% reserve. Right, Chris?
Yeah.
The way I looked at this, excuse me, Carolyn, I thought of this as we have the authorization, we have the ability to increase that room tax. But I'd rather hold that in reserve till sometime we're really, we really need it. It's nice to be able to have.
Which is part of the strategy that came out of the budget meeting,
Yeah.
I mean, it's good
I
dialogue.
appreciate the explanation and obviously you guys thought very thoroughly about it and.
It was, I mean, it was on the table kind of for all the budget committee meetings, and then in just the last one, we decided to officially kind of pull it off the table.
And hopefully, I think, unlike a lot of other town council meetings where we're really banging through the topics and trying to move forward so we can get out of here and go eat or have a beer or whatever. I think this is good for the public. People that tile in for this, I hope that people come in and listen to this dialogue amongst the people from different angles, because I think it'll be helpful to the town.
And then the only other thing on this slide, just to point out, is, you know, all of our vendor costs are going up, so this is just keeping up with that.
Plus, it's a really cool picture.
Yeah.
I like that one.
1800s.
Oh, is it behind us as well?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay, the approach to the expense side of the budget, so we are proposing to contribute $150,000 to the general fund, from the general fund to the capital projects fund. That's represents 5% of the general fund's budget, so it's kind of interesting to think of these percentages and where they go in the pie. Expenses, the purchase of OLS is certainly affecting our budget, and we've started to pencil those numbers in for the FY26 budget. On the expense side, we've talked about payroll increases, costs from vendors, and the shuttle program.
I wish that shuttle program wasn't so expensive.
Me too.
And so,
I mean, it is on our scale, but if you think of other, you know, municipal
I mean,
shuttle programs and what, I
Like
mean,
Park City.
probably
yeah.
do, I think we do pretty well with what we have.
It's the biggest it's the biggest, you know, it's all, well, it's all discretionary. But it's the biggest non-payroll expense in the budget.
that doesn't in general
That didn't-
benefit the citizens of Alta, it benefits the guests of Alta.
You don't think the citizens use the shuttle?
I
I
would,
do.
well, I believe that most people do not, that live here, you know, I understand you may use it occasionally. John, I don't know how often you use it from your home, but it does feel like it is a lot of guests, like,
Oh, yeah.
at least in my condominium community, and you live there as well. The vast majority of the people that are standing at the place to get a ride are
Renters.
yes, and so.
Family members of people that own places there, I see all the time.
It's a beef that I
Yeah.
have with Powder Ridge as well, because we have to pay for it, and I never get the thing, and my guests don't get it, and so I look at it like that is a visitor's, it would be interesting if there was some easy way to say, are you a visitor or are you a taxpayer?
That would be popular.
No, but
But
it's.
50% of our general fund revenue is sales tax, so
Okay.
visitors are covering
Okay.
$70,000 already.
Okay,
More than that.
Of course, it's hard.
okay.
It might be.
I struggle with this one a little, that one a little too, Carolyn. I think it's a great service. I think for the town to be bearing the cost of it is a bit challenging. I wish it was, I think the old model where the lodges and there was a chip up from the different businesses was kind of a better model. Can I make one quick point about the payroll increase? You know, the 189,000, that's a little deceptive. That would be 15% increase in the payroll, but that's really because of the hire. And the true increase in the payroll is about 6%.
I have a slide that
Adjusted
I
basis.
contemplated whether to put more details on this slide, and I chose not to because we have a slide in a few slides here that actually go more into the details and explain that what you just pointed out, John.
Yeah,
that's
it's
just at the
really
highest level.
6%, not 15%.
Okay, this is similar slide to what we saw with the revenue, where it's the comparison between the FY25 budget and the tentative budget. One of the things, again, with this summary format, we've called out the capital projects, separate from the regular operating expenses down at the very, very bottom. And so I gave you a list over on the right of what projects are represented in that 1.7 million number for the tentative budget.
Okay, so compensation, so we've gone through this quite a bit. This is on the left is the range of data that we got from updating our comparables data in the worth of work framework spreadsheet. And what it does is it, the blue bars show the minimum and maximum values. The yellow dots show what job titles are being compensated at here at the town on the left. So that is where folks call their current pay rates against this year's pay range. So on the right is the pay range for all of our job titles, just in a kind of XY axis format. So we've been looking at tables like this for the past couple of years. We are all in the range except for one position that's just barely below the range. So, thanks again for the council's support. This has been a really monumental change in the way the town budgets and compensates over the past couple of years. So Jen can speak a little bit more to the table on the left, wages by department. I'll just, describe that, our approach to wages continues to be to use that work framework to ensure we're in a competitive position in the regional public sector employment market. 2.5% cost of living increases what the Social Security Administration recommends this year. We do, have a little bit of room in the budget to provide merit increases. There are just, I know that what we've been saying is that the last couple of years are the big across the board pay scale adjustments. But we have a complex payroll. We've got folks who've been at the town for 6 months, 1 year, 20 years, more than 20 years. And depending on when folks started, they didn't benefit from the adjustments, and that causes them to fall kind of out of line with where they ought to be in the range based on time, position, and performance. So we have just a little bit of wiggle room in the budget to make merit adjustments when folks have kind of fallen off the track that they ought to be on. We've been discussing in the budget committee this concept of doing away with the performance bonus that the town's provided kind of sort of organically over the decades. The way we've drawn up the budget gives us space to roll those bonus amounts into individual pay rates. So that, eliminating those bonuses in the upcoming fiscal year wouldn't result in a net loss of wages. So those would kind of get baked into the pay rates, and then going forward, we wouldn't budget for performance bonuses in the short term. So that's something that the budget committee brought up and we discussed and sort of worked up internally, and that's what the budget provides for this morning.
And then so this is, budget by department, we've got the comparison there, and this is where we have a little bit more detail on the $189,000 difference between FY25 and FY26. Just as a reminder, in 25, we only budgeted for a 5th officer in the final quarter. So, we're gonna see a bigger increase in 26 because that's gonna ideally be a whole year's worth of that new position. The other thing that I do wanna point out too, is that, this isn't base wages. This is wages plus overtime. So, this is budgeting for kind of like potential, worst case scenarios and stuff. And so we've honed in on our numbers over the past couple of years, and we've gotten pretty good at our estimations. I'm kind of always surprised at how close we come. We also have called out on this, some wages for Our Lady of the addition of that building in anticipation of what that workload might be. Kind of like Sarah and I have been looking at budgets and talking with Connie, and we're thinking, you know, there's a big unknown in exactly what that lease looks like with ACE. So I've kind of tried to be conservative in my numbers just to cover us. But you can see that number down there of 23,000, which leaves basically for the remaining staff, we're talking about, you know, scheduled plus unscheduled. The real difference there is that 57,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I jumped I didn't know this slide was coming. But yeah, that 57,000 represents 5 or 6%, and I think it's eminently fair and reasonable. I think this overall wage structure is well done and deserves applause.
Thanks. We've talked about this a little bit. We have, so the water fund, the main highlights on this, basically we're looking at a 10% rate increase to the water fund. So that's most people are curious about how it's gonna affect the single family residence homes, which is gonna go from 135 to 152. So it's a $17 increase. I have some charts in there of like for small, medium, large lodges with some comparisons between 25 and 26, as well as just how we do the rate structure. I mean, basically we have to, when you're setting your rates, you figure out what does it cost to run the system. And then you take your total number of our ECU value and it's just simple division. And then that's what sets your rates. So simple. I didn't hit on all the main highlights.
No, we talk about the projects and the project slides.
And then sewer, we're looking at a little bit of an increase, bigger increase to sewer, and the main reason for that is we have been increasing water rates over time. Those typically, there's some sort of increase every year. The sewer fund has not had that same opportunity. I think when I first came to the town, we hadn't had a sewer fund rate increase in like over 10 years. So now we're kind of catching up from that a little bit. And so unfortunately, that's kind of why that rate increase is a little bit bigger. So $20 for a household per month.
Okay, yeah, when we started working on this deck, we did not have capital, like slides with the actual capital projects plan on them, and we do. This is a little bit of a preview. You know, we've been talking about just a couple more facilities planning tasks that we, you know, ought to complete in order to have a better complete picture of all of our opportunities to build on land that we control. We previously had $75,000 in the budget for facilities planning phase 2. A part of my thinking on that was we would do avalanche studies at this stage, but I got some sage advice that it's probably not worth the money until you're designing a building. So that took a big chunk of what I thought we would need to spend money on out of you know, hard costs for facilities planning next year, and hoping we can get a few key tasks of site analysis done next year per John's input from a few months ago. Again, we've been talking about you know, needing to decide what big project to target next fiscal year. The Tom Moore toilet, it's one of the talismans of our capital projects plan, along with the dispatch. Those guys at Care and Associates will be here on Friday to finally complete the historic structure report on the Tom Moore toilet, and I hope that's going to give us a roadmap to, you know, hopefully very cost efficient way to stem the tide of deterioration of that thing, so that we can preserve that piece of antiquity. Security cameras, we can get those done this year. That's a big headache for the Marshal's department. So we're proposing to roll that over. Dispatch Council, likewise, it's there when we need to take action after the Valley Emergency Communications Center updates their dispatch platform. Our Lady of the Snows, we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the meeting. Due diligence is underway. well, we're in the due diligence. The due diligence period is ahead of us and we are pursuing the purchase process and we'll talk more about that. In just a little bit. The cross tow water line, so we realized that a couple of months ago, it was a $900,000 project. Now it's about a $650,000 project. We just didn't update the documents properly, so the tentative water fund budget and our capital project plan show, yeah, essentially a $905,000 project with $505,000 of expenses for next year. But the low end, that like it's somewhere between it's about $620,000, so I'm proposing that we budget a total project cost of $650,000. So what we'll do is adjust those 2026 expense numbers out of the water fund down to $250. So sorry we didn't catch that as all these documents were meshing together. And then the remote meters project will continue.
Yeah, and I have notes on if we wanna update those numbers in the tentative budget. I have the line items that we need to change to do that if we want to. Or not.
So just a little bit more of a long-term take on facilities planning. This is the slide we built when we were still talking about you know, whether we were gonna go forward with the OLS purchase. You know, we've got the space plan concept presentation out of the way earlier today. You know, the range of costs there, just to summarize, basically to replace this building and Alta Central like for like, not necessarily site dependent, but you know, just to replace the square footage and functionality we have, the low end of $6.2 million, and a high end of about $12.5 million. And that's more rounded off than the FFKR numbers, and I believe the high end is actually a little bit above that, but that's like, I believe that's roughly the cost of the option number one, to do all that at once. So that's very preliminary and caveated, like the slide says. You know, just further into the horizon, you know, we're gonna continue to have budget challenges. You know, where staff may need to grow. We've been talking about how we're gonna take care of OLS on top of our existing facilities. It's no secret that it's difficult. It's been difficult for quite some time to retain part-time employees to recruit and retain part-time employees for any part-time job description, including our building maintenance jobs. And so we're wondering if now is the time to propose creating a full-time position to do building maintenance that could the right candidate could potentially help us with all of the administrative burden that goes into doing all this planning that we're doing, especially if they have some facilities experience. So beyond that, that's something that we've wanted to start talking about here in the short term. But you know, wage pressures are not going away. It's gonna continue to be expensive to live, you know, within driving distance of Alta. We've got a police department as long as we do that. Costs are gonna go up to, you know, have equipment and technology and to retain staff. We're talking about long-term financial planning. I think Craig has recently been recommending we get together sometime in the summer or early fall to really talk about long-term financial needs once the master planning work is done. Craig is forthright in suggesting we need to start to learn more about bonding because it's the most powerful tool we have to raise funds to build facilities. For instance, there are of course other potential sources of funding such as loans, grants, and so on and so forth. So I'm not gonna
combination with UDOT as you suggested, and
Yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
a fascinating.
It's low
concept.
fruit, I think, in a lot of ways.
So here's the capital projects plan. You know, the red text is what is not approved in the current plan or what has changed. So we'll start at the bottom. We've got $20,000 of design costs to figure out a trailhead restroom. Which we would potentially execute the following fiscal year and, again, maybe that's a grant funded project once we actually build something. Security cameras, that 741 line item for $13,000, that's AMO security cameras. And then the bigger ticket items are towards the top. We've got repairs on Our Lady of the Snows, the patio and the stairs need to be replaced in the windows as well, so we've got $100,000 in there for that. $900,000, the bulk of the purchase price for Our Lady of the Snows. The $25,000 amount for facilities planning, that's down from 75, which is what we had in the plan prior to that. And then beginning in 2028, we see this $9 million cost spread over 3 years, and that's halfway between 6.2 and 12.5, roughly. So that's still a wag, but it is on the horizon, and it's less of a wag than it used to be. So anyway, that's the capital project plan. Proposed capital project associated with this year's budget. For the water fund, you can see that we've programmed in, we've strike through the Hellgate Loop, pipe in the road, and an Alta Central line. We don't think we need to do the Alta Central line. We can talk more about that if you like, but the highlighted in red projects below, a couple of those are those same projects by different names and with more updated cost estimates. So you see those 4, 10-year capital improvement projects in alternating years at the bottom of the table. One thing that we added in recently that we didn't have before was engineering costs. So we know from recent experience that it costs money to design water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure as well. So you see where we've got again very, very round numbers in the budget on years when we don't do capital improvements to design capital improvements. 40,000 is probably a little high for a project, a $180,000 project, but our the Crossdow project was a learning experience, so we think it makes sense to be conservative.
That's good though. That's a good prep for the things that the town is gonna be doing over the next few years. And the more iterative experience you get doing that, I think the better it'll serve us all. And I thought you did it pretty well. B+, A-.
Yeah.
I thought you did great.
A, you know, A for Carolyn.
Swing for a C and
A for me.
So same deal on the sewer plan. We've got some engineering costs in out years. We are proposing to design a replacement of the gold miners, the Peruvian section this upcoming summer. And then you start to see these proposals they've recommended, or these improvements or replacements they've recommended in the next 10 years, in the out years. I'm glad that Steve pointed out we need to learn more about how they came to the conclusion we need to replace that Grizzly sewer line, because that was kind of news. But again, all we have is a draft, and we need to get them a full batch of comments, and we're still working on those. But again, we're talking about them. We want them daylighted and kind of rolled into the projections. All we're doing in adopting the budget is saying that we're going to spend $30,000 this year on engineering for a project in the following year.
That's lost it.
Oh,
Good job, you guys.
Yeah, super great work.
It's really nice to have.
The sinking fund approach to the water pipe and the sewer pipe, where we're gonna sort of start to try to fund the replacement of those pipes over the long term, boy, that's really gonna change the economics of the water and sewer fund. Makes you wanna, you need to be prepared for higher rates if we're gonna start including that in the analysis.
Yeah, it's a big proposition, John.
Yeah, that 150 number today really stuck out to
I
me.
think it's just again, we've got all of this, all these big numbers, and We're due, once we're done with these projects, we're due to get together and sit down with a budget of time. And maybe some facilitation and talk through where in the range of costs we're really gonna target, because I mean. Yeah, these are orders of magnitude, it potentially an order of magnitude.
It may make sense to go for some of the low hanging fruit projects first before we try to incorporate that $4 million number into the analysis, you know? Get some of the immediate needs taken care of and then start adjusting rates to account for the 4 million over time.
Yeah.
I mean, just a thought. I think it's gonna be hard to account for it all at once.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that all at once, I don't think, but. See. So I think that's that for that agenda item.
Yeah, the next agenda item is the actual approval of the,
Of the budget, isn't it?
the tentative budget.
Okay.
And, Mayor, I'll just point out that if we do wanna make that adjustment, just cue me in and I can give you the codes that we would change. Cause I didn't reduce the, number of the cross trout in the tentative budget.
So we have to list that
We have
out in
3
our
items.
adoption of this budget.
That'd be the cleanest and most transparent, yeah.
Clean and transparent, sounds good.
Why do you want to go forward since?
Well, is there discussion, Mayor? Or further discussion? Or John, you tend to have greater granularity on a lot of this stuff. Anything else from your end?
No, I think it's great to get these studies back, and we're actually, you know, getting into the meat of what they have to say after a couple of years of, you know, wondering what they would say. I wouldn't say it's all good news. But it's good to have some answers and start to have some reference points. You know, one thing you got to remember about bonding isn't a free, doesn't make it free because we bond it. And the interest rate may be low, but you still got to pay the money back.
It's
Yeah,
like a loan.
Yeah, of course.
It's more like, it's a loan. It's a form of a loan. So it's not like magic.
No.
Okay, so, I think we're on item 10, discussion of possible action to adopt a 25-26 tentative budget, correct?
I can take a shot at this if we think we're ready.
Yeah.
I move that we adopt the 2025-2026 tentative budget, including the items and adjustments about to be presented by Jen.
Yeah, so we're gonna, in the water fund, we're gonna change 5136,300 to be $250,000. 5139,200 is gonna go to 0. That's, sorry, I just wrote codes down. And then 5140,740 is gonna go to 290,200. And that's basically, I didn't bring the total cost from 500 to.
As stated.
I second.
Further discussion?
And I'm sorry, can you also state the time and date and location of the public hearing for the actual budget?
It's
Well, that's gonna be
July.
in August.
Yeah.
It'll be August 13th at 6 p.m.
To include the August 13th at 6 p.m. tentative meeting, but this is a tentative budget, right? Colleen? So I
Yeah,
don't
it's
think
just
we're-
that the state code requires you to state when the public hearing is going to be for the actual budget.
Shall we
That's
include
true.
that in this resolution?
Or we can do it next month too. We'll make sure,
Okay.
Jen, we make a note to include that next month as a budget, as a agenda line item.
Yeah.
And then I would revalidate that we go forward as stated without the public hearing included at this point for the tentative budget.
As long as, Paul, you're saying, does it have to be adopted at the same time as the tentative budget? Or not?
The state code generally, right? You adopt the tentative budget now, and then the actual budget will get adopted in August when you have your truth and taxation hearing. And the state code says something about announcing the time and date and location of your public hearing for the actual budget at the time of your tentative budget. So that's
Which is now.
why, right,
Okay,
but
so-
Jen just stated August 13th, 6:30 PM. there in your community. I think it has to be 6:30 for the truth and taxation.
It's not after 6.
It has,
Sure.
oh, is it, okay, you're right. I thought
I think
that
6
there's some
o'clock.
weird, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't look this up. It's something very weird. So, yeah.
Yes, no, but that's right. That's why we structured the August
Yeah.
meeting the way we did. Okay.
So maybe we make the movement, I can do it. Do we need to? I think we're covered, because we've now identified it to the public that is the time, August 13th at 6 PM here,
For the public hearing.
for the public hearing to adopt the budget.
Is that what time our meeting starts or?
No, we have a weird start earlier
Start
and then
stop, okay.
stop and then
Wait,
go back.
hold all those questions, people, let's get this.
Jeez.
Yes, and so it's been moved and seconded.
I'll do a roll call vote.
All right,
Mayor Burke,
yes.
Councilmember Ansel,
Yes.
Councilmember Byrne,
Yes.
and Councilmember Schilling.
Yes,
The motion passes. Thank you.
man, that was great work you
Yeah.
guys put together.
Yeah,
It
you
was
know,
awesome.
it's a lot of man hours there, human hours, person hours. Okay, next item is discussion of possible action to adopt, resolution 2025 R9, adopting the 2025 Salt Lake County Multi-Hazard, Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Are you gonna speak to this?
I can, so I presented, I forget exactly how many months ago, on the hazard mitigation plan. It's something we participate in. We have historically, it has to be updated every 5 years. I've been working with the folks at the Salt Lake County Emergency Management Center. And since I presented, all we've really done is just added more detail, more depth, more, we've only made it more robust and detailed. I don't think we've really changed much other than that. And at this point, it has been submitted to FEMA as well as to the state of Utah. They have 45 days to review it and potentially suggest any edits or suggestions. But they're kind of asking that we move forward with adoption now because it will technically lapse at the end of this month. So they just kind of want to avoid any lapse in.
And any inputs or compliance requirements that come back from them, you would just put it back in as another East Town Council agenda item and we would re-adopt again at that point if we had to.
I believe anything, the way the resolution is written, we would not have to re-adopt anything unless there was any
Okay.
like substantive changes.
I mean,
Basically, the way it's written is it allows us to adopt it now with any additional enhancements from FEMA or the state, which they've kind of assured me is it's only gonna make it better and more accurate and more up to code versus like, you know, they're not gonna take anything out.
I just like that it's got multi and hazard repeatedly
Yeah.
throughout the sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 years from now, it'll be even longer.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, if there were any plan updates. After the approved, that 45-day approval window, then we might have to adopt a new one, but
Okay.
the goal is to just adopt this today and be done for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it was a good presentation. It was in February, I think, that you did
Okay.
that. I move that we adopt 2025-R-9 adaptation of the 2025 Salt Lake County Multi-Hazard, Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Okay.
Discussion,
Second.
all in favor? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Let's vote.
Resolution, sorry.
Yes, all right.
Councilmember Ansel,
Yes.
Councilmember Byrne,
Yes.
Councilmember Schilling,
Yes.
and Mayor Burke.
Yes,
Motion passes.
okay. Next item is, well, report on the purchase of, Our Lady of Snows long-term lease discussions with Alpha Community Richmond.
So Sarah, unfortunately, Sarah Gibbs with Ace, was not able to be here, so she wanted me to apologize for her, not being present for this. Chris and I have been meeting with her a bunch, but, as far as the purchase process, we are working with the diocese currently on the contract. And so, but we've also got like our due diligence, we're starting to pencil it out. communicating with title agency, that sort of stuff. Was working yesterday on trying to find somebody to do an environmental inspection. So we're rolling on that sort of stuff. Our goal is to close by June 30th, if not before. So it'd be nice, but that's 6 weeks away, so that's probably, June 30th is probably realistic,
Yeah,
not before that.
but nothing's presented itself so far that would prohibit that, so that's good news then.
And then, we've been meeting, there's Alta Community Enrichment has a, OLS committee, that Chris and I have met with. We've also been meeting with Sarah Gibbs, independent of that. And what we would like to propose is that, and I realize this might not work for you, but is that we have a work session or a special meeting with, Alta Community Enrichment and the council to talk about lease options. So we're kind of formalizing, we're kind of working towards two options that we can kind of present to the council and talk through the pros and cons of each approach.
Is that a meeting that can be closed to the public?
But with all those parties.
With all those parties, can we have a meeting with the
Yeah, I
ACE?
don't know that it qualifies
Probably
for a
not.
reason for a closed door meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think it does.
I don't
Okay,
think,
sorry.
I don't think it
But
does.
No, I mean, it's,
I think we're making real progress, I think. But I know that we have a lot of different perspectives on how the building should be used. But I think, we're working in good faith with the committee, which has diverse opinions amongst it. And with Sarah, and I think we're gonna be able to make a nice recommendation.
and is there a town council member on that committee?
Well, no, the ACE board committee,
So it's the ACE board committee and you two,
yes.
okay?
But you could attend, town council member could attend, or is that,
No, they didn't invite us.
no, we were just trying to work through a bunch of like.
because we gave them direction.
Yeah, and so we were
Okay.
just trying to
Totally with
understand
that.
and just start to have some conversations.
Sure.
So now what we'd like to do is come to the council
Okay.
with ACE and some recommendations and get your opinions on it and see if there is a way. So, I mean, we're gonna come recommending one option over the other, but we wanna present both options because we feel like we've heard different things from both the town council and the ACE board. So we wanna put all the options on the table and talk through them.
So you're suggesting a work session later this month for that?
Work session / special meeting, I mean, it
Yeah.
would be really, I don't know that we would be able to make a decision in that meeting. I would maybe put something on the agenda to give us the option.
And is it, are you able to sort of present some of those things so that we may have an opportunity to digest that?
Yeah, so we're
And
working,
ask some questions, both perhaps individually of you and Chris and individually of the ACE board?
yeah, so we're working on materials for that, and so
Okay.
what I was gonna suggest is that we shoot for a June 4th date. I know that works for ACE, I don't know if it's 3 weeks from now. I was gonna say June 4th at 4 p.m.
I think that's
Um,
day after.
it's the day after you
back.
get back, so I don't know if that works or doesn't work. Maybe it's perfect timing.
9 times, so it's
1 AM.
Oh, where are you going, where were you going?
to the Adriatic,
Ooh, sweet.
But as long as we have a quorum, we're okay.
yeah.
Because I think everybody, I mean, it's not taking that action, but I think the dialogue's important.
Yeah, and then
I'll-
we have the June meeting, I mean, cause it'd be really, we would like to have like a strong indication of the direction we're going. Before the closing, like, I think we really wanna know
Well,
that,
you
and
know-
ACE wants to know that too, so.
And what's important here, I think here too, is the two are separate. There's the doing due diligence and closing on it.
Yes,
I think there are mechanisms you have in place that you're coordinating with ACE, so it's minimal disruption to scheduling the facility, so ACE can use it, other people can use it to the best of their ability. Or, okay, maybe that's not a great area, but we can work this independent of closing and try and get to a final solution. And neither one retards the other. Which I think is good.
If you're looking, I hope you didn't schedule June 4th to try to accommodate me.
no, Sarah and I had picked that date out yesterday
good.
as a date
Okay.
that worked for both of us.
All right.
And I was just trying to go with the Wednesday 4 o'clock, thinking that
Okay.
it worked for the council, so.
So I don't,
I'm on an airplane to Valdosta, Georgia.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Rome that day.
Okay, so, what do we think about June? 11th, the following week.
I'm gonna be in Boston.
I will be in Austin speaking,
You're gonna be where?
Austin, giving a speech.
Austin, okay, Boston and Austin.
That's unfortunate.
What about the fifth?
I could probably zoom in from that on the.
On the 5th?
On the 11th. On the 5th? Oh, wait, oh, I'm sorry, I'm available on the 4th, crap, I leave on the 5th. Too many little arrows in my calendar.
I will physically be present on the 4th.
I
in
can,
Alda.
So Roger's the only one that has the issue.
No,
with the
John's in Rome.
Oh, I thought that was a different.
in
day.
Rome.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, everybody's everywhere, holy shit.
John, so remind me, it's 9 hours ahead of time, is that right, sir? 8 hours
I
ahead of
think
time?
so. Grom and I are gonna go to the Vatican on the 4th.
You what?
Grom and I are
married in
gonna
the
go to the Vatican on the 4th.
Oh, so you'll be traveling on the 4th, okay.
I guess I'm just wondering if it was in the morning, John.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
easier for me in the morning at like 9 a.m. Your
Yeah.
time would
So-
work while I'm in Europe. I'm gonna be in Europe.
I can do that.
tomorrow.
On June
What
4th at
time
night.
do you
I'm
get home?
not sure why the council needs to be involved in this stage unless you guys really want us to be.
I think that question is to you.
Well,
So I think just
Fair point.
because of the nature of this, we were looking for council support on it. I mean, I think that this could be an administrative act, but since it has such big consequences, we really wanted to just be super transparent and include you as much, or I guess as little as you want, so you direct us.
Well, that's why I was asking about can we have like an individual conversation, cause I'd love to hear how far you guys are going. I had a lovely conversation with an ACE board member, Aubrey, who I believe is on a committee.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed that one-on-one conversation. I don't know what Chris and Jen think. At the moment, I have no idea what you guys are thinking. And so I need to know more before, cause I trust that you guys are gonna do an outstanding job and you're gonna look out for yourselves, which by that, I mean that Chris, you're not gonna be suddenly running the calendar at OLS as part of your other project, so I wanna. We have a lot to talk about, I guess, but I don't know where you guys are, so.
we're trying to represent the diversity of perspectives we heard over, regarding. What the right arrangement between the town and ACES and how, the building should be utilized.
Is it I have a suggestion maybe.
And I know it sounds like we're hiding something, it's just that we're.
No, I don't think anybody's, I think we're past that point, but my suggestion might be. Cause there's, there's some spectrum diversity of opinion to your point. John and I are kind of like on far ends on some things, but we're all rowing together. And I think the spirit of what you guys are putting out is you wanna make sure all the town council perspectives are covered. You're trying to put it into a meeting. What if the suggestion might be, what if we all agree to hit you over the next 2 weeks? Or is that a burden on you guys, cause you're gonna have to get hit by 5 different people?
No, it's not a burden, here's the situation, is that, I think Chris and I feel like we're getting really close and we feel really good, like, that we're gonna be recommending a long-term lease situation with ACE. But do you wanna accept our recommendation, or are you, like, individually,
If
one,
it's
like, I
30
mean.
years, no way, from my vote, if I have to vote. If it's
Right.
a long-term lease means different things, but 30
Yeah.
years.
So one thing
Very
that like,
long
so
time.
Carolyn, that's been right here on my shoulder as we're having these discussions, and I don't wanna necessarily get too much into it, but
Right.
is that maybe there are certain ways that you can actually work the lease to assure some sort of value system that, like, I think might solve some of your concerns on 30 years. Maybe there's like some checkpoints and some thresholds of things so that you're not given this carte
Right,
blanche.
so I guess
Right, so
that's why I'm
those are
like,
things that we're trying to craft those things with ACE and asking them what their opinion is and how can we accomplish these sort of things.
Right,
Um,
and so I guess that's why I'm like, I don't know where you guys are and what you're thinking, so if we're saying, hey. And I don't know if the town council is the one that actually votes on, or if this is just between the town, cause you guys own and administer
But,
town,
I
and you
mean,
don't
I
even
think-
have to have our input.
I don't know, Polly, I mean,
I think it can be either. I mean, ultimately, is it the administration of the OLS was probably more of an executive function, but by all means, the executor can take into account the wishes of the council, of the legislative body.
we want you to support this.
yes, yes.
I think it's critical
Ultimately,
because you guys,
you want the council to ratify or endorse the lease. You don't want to be signing the lease without us being on the record as supporting you.
right,
Yeah,
And don't you want to have this as a public meeting so that they can actually hear the discussion, given the history of it?
the recent history of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we were proposing. is
I think that's a good idea.
Let's get together,
So-
work through those pain points and show you how we think we
And
can
then
address
we
them.
will have those documents well in advance, so we can digest or ask a question.
so let's shoot
That's
for
what we're
the,
working on, so that's why I
Okay.
wasn't trying to schedule this for next week, cause we need some
Great.
time to.
Okay.
if it works for John and Roger, let's shoot for the 4th of June at 9 in the morning as a starting point,
Sure.
local.
If you
John,
can do it in the morning, any day you can do it in the morning, I'll try to make it work.
I think it's pretty important that you're there. Does that work for you, Carolyn, and
I can switch some stuff up.
surgery on some guy's pancreas?
No, I'm an emergency doc, I already know how to plan things.
Okay. Some guy's reconstructive brain
That would be
surgery.
really bad. I did
How
go
about
to a
you, Roger?
site today on delivering babies in.
This is
bed.
Wednesday, the 4th at
9
9
AM,
AM. Yeah, I think so.
we'll hold a special meeting,
Yeah,
more of
I
a,
wasn't there.
we'll call it a special meeting, but it's gonna be more of a work session type of informal engagement with.
I think the wording will help keep any misconceptions at bay.
Seems like the right staff report for that meeting is going to be critical. You know, if you can get us a staff report that outlines the choices and we can read it ahead of time, that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Dan, I don't think
Yeah,
you
you
might
guys
have
are
any
up to that.
disagreement at this point. You know, it's water under the bridge that we're buying the building.
Yeah.
And I think we
Well,
both just see it utilized by the community and stay a community building, at least for the time being, and then ultimately do what's best for Alta.
Yeah, I didn't mean to try and make it more of a stigma than it was. I felt it's important because of the diversity of views going into this. I think it's pretty clutch that you're there, and I feel the same way. I'd like to be there.
Yeah.
10 o'clock.
Just letting you know, I don't have
Yeah.
any like lingering issues or anything about it, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
water under the bridge.
So 9 o'clock on the 4th.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that works. Yeah.
So the next item.
All right, we got that on.
Okay.
Number 13. Robert.
13, discussion possible action to adopt resolution 2025-R-10 repealing and replacing dog license numbers.
Well, we discussed that in March, I think.
Yeah, so this is this is removing a class B, which is an owner, and then putting it.
A to B.
I'm sorry, removing the residential class A and putting it into the owner's class B for the dog licenses.
But
Due
no
to
change
the-
in total numbers.
No
Just-
change in total numbers.
No change in total, yeah. And
Reallocation of it.
it is due to, we only had 1 or 2 residents and we had 3 licenses, so.
Yeah,
It's
got it.
it's an unaccounted or we.
Okay,
And basically what the resolution does is it just says, let's give it to the next person on the list. Let's not hold another drawing, do anything like that, just kind of go further down the list.
So everybody applied for a dog license this year, got one.
No,
in
Only
class
in
A
the
they did.
residential.
in the voter class.
Everyone in the voter class got a dog permit this year.
Yes, there was only 2 people that applied.
Wow, I mean, I don't think I've heard that happening.
No, I know.
Ever,
I
like
know.
usually it's like the lottery and you're crossing your fingers and sometimes you go multiple years in a row and you don't get one. So that's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, we did one drawing, my first one, I think, where there were 6 applicants at 6 licenses, so we didn't actually have to do a drawing. But I've never had there be less applicants than there were licenses.
Yeah,
That
okay.
is first, for
Good.
sure.
Dog stabilization and all.
I'm definitely not.
Okay, any further discussion on this motion?
I move we adopt the 2025-R-10, which repeals and replaces dog license numbers as stated.
I second that motion.
Discussion, okay, all in favor? Oh, no, sorry.
Councilmember Byrne,
Yes.
Councilmember Schilling,
Yes.
Mayor Burke,
Yes.
and Councilmember Ansel.
Yes.
Motion
Motion
passes.
passes. All right, next item is new business.
I have a small bout of new business and I'm sorry that it's like.
And Mike has one.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Mike.
We're like staying after school, so I'm gonna try and talk real fast. I want to bring the council's attention that it's all Westrope, the Alpha Plow Crew, has announced his retirement after decades of helping out the community, in particular the town. I would ask the council to recognize him.
Okay.
Wow.
Sure.
Westrope.
Wow.
Our,
That's awesome.
Mr. Sunshine.
does that mean our plowing stops? No, I hope not.
Yeah.
It might be different though.
So I received a email from a cabin owner and then had a conversation with this cabin owner and I was hoping to address Mike Vaughn when he was here. But basically, there's a couple cabin owners who feel like their neighbor, the lift company, was not particularly kind to them or did not inform them when they made all these changes for the Supreme Lift. Multiple trees have been excavated, the incredible noise level and the disruption to their structures, et cetera, and they're concerned about how people are going to be skiing closer to their homes and liability for their homes, and so they just, which makes some sense. And I think they have felt like, hey, you know, there's a lot of issues, but I do think that what I just wanted to share with Mike is that we're all neighbors here. And that I think the neighborly thing to do may have been to engage with those cabin owners a little bit more and say, hey, just so you know, construction's gonna start on X day and we anticipate it being done and the noise level's gonna be such. And by the way, your private road that goes to your cabin that you own both sides of, we're gonna use that as part of our construction process, and sorry for the damage to the road, or we're gonna help you with the road a little bit, or, so I just wanted to, I was hoping for a little bit of discussion with Mr. Mon, but I just thought I'd bring that up publicly.
A suggestion might be, as the person who received this and had the dialogue and is sort of representing the community, we reach out to Mike and maybe have that same chat with him. I think it would be good if you did that as a town councilman.
I would be happy to, and I did suggest to this cabin owner who's met with several other cabin owners that they approach the lift company.
Yeah.
And he was like super reasonable, it's just like, it wasn't a neighborly thing.
And I heard from maybe the same cabin owner and put him in touch with the district ranger. Just to talk about, all that.
I mean, I think it's our responsibility to represent our citizens in such manner.
I do as well, so.
Yeah, no, that's a good engagement.
Yeah, indeed.
I'll reach out to Mr. Moen.
Okay, any other new business?
Just that when John zooms in, I feel an urge to recite the Gettysburg Address.
Yeah.
Because it's really prominent in the background. He's there, the top half of John, but you really get a lot.
The outdoors in the back of your view, isn't it, John? Like,
No.
I'm always.
No, that's inside.
Is that not a hall? Is that a hallway or is that a deck? Over your left shoulder?
Over my
Looks like-
left. What, no, that's the door out to my deck.
Yeah, it's the deck, okay. I thought that was the hallway for the longest time, but now I realize it's,
It's slightly different today.
I appreciate
So we
that.
changed the deal a little bit today. I have a picture of my father meeting Ronald Reagan in the on the printer there.
Right.
For your
No, that's a good
background.
thing.
Inspiration, Ronald Reagan, Lincoln.
Nice.
All right, I think we're ready for an adjournment.
I move that we adjourn the town council meeting of May 14th, 2025.
Second.
Then moved and seconded, we adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We
Yeah.
drove-
Thank
The
you,
only
everybody.
survivor
Hanging in.
from the
Thank
community was
you.
a former council member,
See you.
Bert.